Chapter 174. Those from the Royal Academy split into 3 formations, advancing towards the students of the Emperor's Star Academy. Behind them, archers took down the bows on their backs, arrows nocked to the bowstring, ready to go at any time. Soldiers from the army? A cold light flickered in Ren Qianxing's eyes as he stared at Chu Tianjiao. Your Highness, are you planning to mobilize the strength of the army? The eyes of the elders of the Emperor's Star Academy turned cold. Was Chu Tianjiao forcing them to engage in a decisive battle? If Chu Tianjiao mobilized a large number of soldiers from the army, the students of the Emperor's Star Academy naturally wouldn't be able to outlast them. Luckily, the rebel army was too powerful, and the royal clan couldn't afford to send too many experts into the royal capital to participate in the war against the Emperor's Star Academy. The students of the godly General Martial Palace are originally the reserve force of the army. Senior, why are you making a fuss over nothing? Chu Tianjiao laughed. Ren Qianxing had no idea what Chu Tianjiao was thinking. Bows and arrows. Qin Wenyan coldly snorted. At the back of the Emperor's Star Academy, a group of students also took out their bows and arrows. Astral light flashed as the arrows from both sides pierced through the air, filling the air with a rain of arrows. Fatty Fan Le glanced at the rain of arrows as he licked his lips. Sadly, he wasn't strong enough yet. If not, he would be able to make use of these arrows. Currently, his control over them was still limited. If it wasn't for Fan Li's control, the killing power of the arrows wouldn't be sufficient. They could only break the formation and could be easily blocked by close-range attacks. Both sides advanced forwards, and abruptly, a dazzling beam of astral light shot up into the skies. The silhouette in the air discovered that the students of the Emperor's Star Academy were all equipped with different types of divine weapons. Qin Wenyan had forged spears, swords, axes, shields, and other divine weapons, allowing the students of the Emperor's Star Academy to choose the most suitable ones. Both sides finally clashed against each other. Beams of cold light slashed down from the skies. Sword light, spear light, mountain-splitting axes, all of them were incomparably tyrannical. In that instant of collision, the Emperor's Star Academy obtained a complete victory, killing several students from the Royal Academy while suffering 0 casualties. All of them are divine weapons, and they are all second-ranked or above. The expression of the figure in the air above the Royal Academy was extremely unsightly. The Royal Academy relied on the royal clan, but they didn't even have such equipment. There weren't many people who had divine weapons. Seems like it was provided by the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Chu Tianjiao's eyes flickered. He had always been keeping track of Qin Wenyan's movements, and had paid a visit to the Divine Weapon Pavilion before. It's time to move ahead of schedule. Chu Tianjiao murmured in his heart, after which he laughed. Since the disciples are competing against each other, we can't just sit idly by. Would the elders of the Emperor's Star Academy please guide us? Chu Tianjiao's voice reverberated through the air. Momentarily, the countenances of those around him turned solemn as they released their auras. Stepping forward, the howls of demonic beasts could be heard. You want a decisive battle? Those from the Emperor's Star Academy couldn't see through Chu Tianjiao's intentions. Not long after the sound of Chu Tianjiao's voice faded, the sound of wind whistling could be heard from afar. The Yuanfu cultivators who were hiding in the shadows all appeared, surrounding the Yuanfu cultivators of the Emperor's Star Academy. Prepare for battle. Ren Qianxing calmly commanded. The Yuanfu cultivators nodded their heads as they dispersed. A battle between Yuanfu cultivators naturally required space, or else they wouldn't be able to unleash their full potential. Very swiftly, the entire space was filled with Yuanfu cultivators. Such a scene caused the hearts of those spectating from afar to pound violently. The battle was about to begin. Roar! The demonic beasts howled in rage as both sides clashed against each other. Even Chu Tianjiao and Xiao Lan stepped out, joining the fray as they searched for their own opponents. Resplendent astral souls frenziedly blossomed in the air, as destructive currents of energy swept across the area. A battle between Yuanfu cultivators was truly terrifying. Qin Wenyan's ancient halberd pierced into the heart of another Yuanfu cultivator, as he inclined his head, his heart pounding. He didn't expect that the decisive battle would erupt so quickly. This time around, Chu Tianjiao's determination was truly great. Abruptly, Qin Wenyan felt his entire body turning cold. In front of him, a silhouette could be seen walking over. This person was mixed in with the students of the Royal Academy, yet at this moment, Qin Wenyan could feel an extreme sense of danger from him. Disguise! Qin Wenyan pulled out his ancient halberd as he explosively retreated. However, the speed of that person was too fast. His entire person transformed into a blur as a gigantic palm imprint slammed towards Qin Wenyan, wanting to smash Qin Wenyan to death with a single palm strike. However, at the same instant, a black-colored silhouette dashed out. A black-colored sword pierced into the palm imprint, causing a thunderous sound to echo out as a terrifying aura permeated the area. Evidently, those from the Emperor Star Academy had taken precautions against Qin Wenyan, and there were also people secretly protecting Qin Wenyan. One couldn't help but say that Chu Tianjiao's choice to make a move against Qin Wenyan after the decisive battle was too good. The other Yuanfu cultivators had already started their battles, and had no time to care about anything else. Someone is dealing with Qin Wenyan. Ren Qianxing coldly snorted. Momentarily, several Yuanfu elders descended from the skies. However, their opponents all unleashed powerful attacks in an attempt to obstruct them. Yi Wux's silhouette descended from the skies as a tricolored sword slashed towards Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan inclined his head as he brandished his ancient halberd in an impenetrable manner. Qi! A gigantic sword slashed downwards. Qin Wenyan's body was suppressed to the point where he had no way to retreat. At the same time, another Yuanfu cultivator erupted forth with his aura, as he directly grabbed towards Qin Wenyan. Son of a bitch! Fan Le howled in rage as he controlled his arrows to fly towards that Yuanfu cultivator. However, all of them were deflected by his opponent's palms. Qin Wenyan was already at a disadvantage against Yi Wux. He retreated step by step, and now that there was another Yuanfu cultivator, his footsteps were all in disarray. Scram! A thunderous roar thundered out as Ren Qianxing soared through the air. A fearsome golden sword appeared in his hands as he abruptly slashed out. The terrifying sword light slashed apart everything, and several Yuanfu realm cultivators had their heads pierced through, dying instantly. Ren Qianxing's entire body transformed into a shadow as he dashed towards Qin Wenyan. Yi Wux once again unleashed an attack towards Qin Wenyan. Yuanfu cultivators had the advantage of being able to soar in the air, but arterial circulation realm cultivators had no way to make up for it. With a roar of rage, Qin Wenyan's long hair fluttered in the wind as he swept out with his ancient halberd once again. However, at this instant, Qin Wenyan's countenance paled. He could feel the threat of death approaching from behind, and only now did he react. At this moment, it was already impossible for him to turn around and block. He could only frantically circulate his divine energy to protect his back. Puchi! A light sound rang out as a piercing pain pierced through the heart. A short sword had pierced into Qin Wenyan's body, and not only that, it was in the position of his heart. This attack was aimed at Qin Wenyan's life. Wenyan! Luo Huan and Fan Li's countenances turned deathly pale. They halted their steps, only to see that Luo Huan's beautiful eyes were completely devoid of life. But after Mountain's death, was Wenyan going to die as well? Fatty Fan Le felt a deep pain in his heart. That carefree and uninhibited youth was so amiable to his friends, but when facing his enemies, he was tyrannical and unrestrained. This was his best friend, his brother. Was he going to die today? Chu Tianjiao cast a glance downwards, as his gaze froze. Evidently, killing Qin Wenyan wasn't part of his plan. In that case, who was the Yi clan or the O clan? At this moment, the members of the Yi and O clan all had puzzled expressions on their faces. Who was the person who had pierced the short sword into Qin Wenyan's body? Die! With a howl, Ren Qianxing's silhouette arrived. His terrifying palms directly smashed the head of his opponent into smithereens. Since that person had given Qin Wenyan a fatal blow, he should have already predicted his own ending. There was no need to doubt this point. The Emperor Star Academy would never allow the person who killed Qin Wenyan to leave alive. Yi Wux had already retreated into the air. He knew how dangerous it would be if he continued to stay there. Ren Qianxing's killing intent gushed forth as he slashed out with his palms, massacring the students of the Royal Academy. Ren Qianxing was truly enraged. He inclined his head and stared at Chu Tianjiao. Even Chu Tianjiao couldn't help but feel his heart trembling. This unexpected turn of events would cause the Emperor Star Academy to go crazy. I didn't intend to kill him. Chu Tianjiao spoke. However, upon seeing the look in Ren Qianxing's eyes, he could only bitterly smile. Even if he tried to explain himself now, it would be useless. Ren Qianxing wrapped his arms around Qin Wentian's body, using his astral energy to seal Qin Wentian's wounds. He then soared up into the air as he roared, "Retreat!" The eyes of those from the Emperor Star Academy turned red as their killing intent surged. However, after hearing Ren Qianxing's words, they still retreated. Chu Tianjiao waved his hands, ordering them not to give chase. The assassination attempt on Qin Wenyan had already thoroughly enraged the Emperor Star Academy. He didn't want them to go crazy. His silhouette landed on the ground, staring at the headless corpse. This person was none other than the person who killed Qin Wenyan. It would be extremely difficult to ascertain his identity now. Things are getting troublesome. Chu Tianjiao murmured. He didn't know if that attack had taken Qin Wentian's life. However, Chu Tianjiao quickly adjusted his emotions. Since it had already happened, there was no point in thinking about it. What he needed to do now was to deal with the madness of the Emperor Star Academy. How do you plan to deal with this? Xiao Lan landed on the ground, his countenance calm. He didn't really care. Since things had reached this point, it was fine as well. Using offense as defense. Chu Tianjiao replied, as a sharp glint of light flashed in his eyes. Now, they had to attack, pressuring the Emperor Star Academy, completely eliminating any future threats. Xiao Lan cast a glance at Chu Tianjiao, silently praising him for his talent. This was undoubtedly the best method. In that case, let us prepare to slaughter the Emperor Star Academy. Xiao Lan spoke, his words causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. From now onwards, it would be a situation where neither side would rest until the other was dead. The incident that happened during the duel quickly spread throughout the royal capital. Many people were sighing at Chu Tianjiao's madness. To think that he actually gave the order to assassinate Qin Wenyan. What they didn't know was that Qin Wentian's death wasn't part of Chu Tianjiao's plan. Naturally, the Yi clan and the O clan wouldn't admit that they were the culprits. This matter had become a mystery. However, the people of the royal capital were also extremely concerned about Qin Wentian's life and death. This young genius was the most dazzling star of the royal capital this year. If he were to die here today, it would truly be a pity. Chapter 175. In a room within the Emperor Star Academy, several elders were gathered together, staring at the figure lying on the bed. Traces of worry could be seen in their eyes. "How is it?" Ren Qianxing anxiously asked as he saw the elder sitting on the bed turn around. Strange. The life force in his heart is extremely vigorous, and there seems to be a special energy in his bloodline, circulating through his heart, allowing his heart to maintain its life force and slowly recover. The elder murmured in a low voice as shock could be seen in his eyes. If it was someone else, they would have already died. Everyone in the room tensed up as they clenched their fists tightly, exhaling a mouthful of turbid air. Will his life be in danger? Ren Qianxing asked. He didn't die the instant he was struck. With his vigorous life force, as long as he recuperates properly, he should be able to slowly recover. The elder spoke again, causing everyone in the room to heave a sigh of relief. Wentian. Qin Yao's tears turned into a smile as she sat on the bed, gently stroking Qin Wentian's forehead. Her face was filled with tears, she had almost been scared to death. Qin Wentian had been struck in the heart. Everyone, disperse. Temporarily seal the news, and send people to guard this place. Ren Qianxing commanded as the crowd dispersed. The elder who was proficient in healing stayed behind, clicking his tongue in wonder in his heart. A cultivator at the arterial circulation realm actually had such a vigorous life force? How strange. Luo Huan walked to the bed, as a radiant smile appeared on her face. She murmured to herself, Wenin, Mountain has already left. Don't abandon your senior sister as well. After speaking, she departed. The instant she turned, the smile on her face vanished, replaced by a cold glint of light. The 9 mystical palace and the royal clan of Chu. The hatred between them grew deeper and deeper. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. In these 3 days, the conflict between the Emperor Star Academy and the royal clan had completely erupted. They no longer gathered their strength for direct clashes, but instead sent out Yuanfu cultivators to hunt them down. As for the arterial circulation realm cultivator Wu Xiu, he was forbidden from leaving the academy. The moment he stepped out, he would be in danger of death. Both sides had completely torn apart all pretense of cordiality. Even Chu Tianjiao didn't dare to casually roam outside. If the Emperor Star Academy went crazy, there was a high possibility that they would assassinate him. During these 3 days, there were constant reports of casualties on both sides. In the most disastrous ambush, the Emperor Star Academy was ambushed by experts from the Royal Academy. Fortunately, the experts from the Royal Academy managed to arrive in time to provide reinforcements. In that battle, 4 Yuanfu realm cultivators and 8 arterial circulation realm cultivators had died. A true storm had already engulfed the entire royal capital. In the Emperor Star Academy, Qin Wenyan was still unconscious. Beside him sat 2 beautiful young ladies. Qingqing, it's been hard on you these few days. Qin Yao stared at the beautiful silhouette sitting opposite her as an expression of gratitude appeared on her face. Of course, I'm good at this. Mo Qingqing smiled sweetly at Qin Yao, before continuing to feed Qin Wenyan the medicinal soup. Staring at the side profile of Mo Qingqing, Qin Yao fell into a daze. Smiling, she replied, If only you could always take care of him like this. Sure, I'll let this Dumbo take advantage of me. Mo Qingqing smiled sweetly, before suddenly realizing the meaning of Qin Yao's words. Raising her head, she saw Qin Yao's beautiful eyes blinking, causing Mo Qingqing to blush. What I meant was to take care of him until he wakes up. I know. What else do you mean? Qin Yao smiled ambiguously, causing Mo Qingqing to silently curse herself for talking too much. I wonder when he will wake up. Qin Yao's countenance was filled with worry. Don't worry, he's recovering well. Mo Qingqing consoled. Actually, she knew that Qin Wentian's injuries were extremely heavy, and he would be unconscious for quite a few days. Qin Yao lightly nodded her head. Qingqing, I'll go see if father has finished brewing the medicine. I'll bring it over to you later. After speaking, Qin Yao left. Mo Qingqing slowly fed the bowl of medicine into Qin Wentian's mouth, before wiping his mouth clean. She then murmured to herself, Dumbo, this is the 2nd time I've brewed medicine for you. You better get well soon. Mo Qingqing propped her chin up with her hands, staring at Qin Wenyan in a daze. She didn't expect that the person she had brewed medicine for was Qin Wenyan. Maybe this was fate. Staring at that handsome face, quiet and peaceful, she could still remember the first time she met him. Back then, he was still a young and immature youth. This year, he must have suffered a lot. And now, he almost lost his life. What a Dumbo! As she stared at him, Mo Qingqing gradually grew more and more infatuated. Stretching out her hands, she pinched Qin Wentian's cheeks as a mischievous expression appeared on her face. This fellow was getting more and more handsome. Qin Wentian seemed to have felt something. His eyelashes fluttered as he slowly opened his eyes. After which, he saw a flawlessly beautiful face with a panic-stricken expression on it. Her hands were still pinching his cheeks. Swish. Mo Qingqing retracted her hands with lightning speed. Upon seeing Qin Wentian blinking his eyes, her face instantly turned red. She wanted nothing more than to find a hole in the ground to hide in. Let me see if you can feel it. Seems like it's really effective. You've really woken up. Mo Qingqing pretended to smile. However, Qin Wenyan didn't say anything, he only stared at her, causing her face to turn so red that it seemed as though blood would drip out at any moment. Seeing the shy expression on Mo Qingqing's face, Qin Wenyan felt his heart pounding. The Mo Qingqing at this moment was too beautiful. Come here. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. Emo Qingqing's eyelashes fluttered as she blinked her eyes. However, she still lowered her head and moved closer to Qin Wenyin. Her heart pounded rapidly. This was the first time she felt so nervous. Only to see Qin Wenyin stretching out his hands and pinching her cheeks twice. After which, he smiled. "We're even now." Emo Qingqing froze, her face flushed red. "I'll go get the medicine." Emo Qingqing ran away with her tail between her legs. Staring at her disappearing silhouette, a radiant smile appeared on Qin Wenyan's face as he murmured, "Thank you." Today, Emo Qingqing was in a daze. Seeing her embarrassed expression, Qin Wenyin would occasionally crack a joke or two. This caused Qin Yao to be extremely happy. It seemed like there really was hope for Qin Wenyin and Qingqing to be together. For the next few days, Qin Wenyin recovered very quickly. On the 5th day, he was already able to cultivate. The tempest in the royal capital continued to rage, but the intense battle seemed to be very far away from Qin Wenyin. Mustang, Luo Huan and the rest would occasionally come to visit Qin Wenyin, but they didn't inform him of the situation outside. They only told him to focus on his cultivation, and warned him that before he stepped into Yuanfu, he was not allowed to participate in the battles outside. This caused a bitter smile to appear on Qin Wenyan's face. It seemed like the Emperor Star Academy was worried that he would be assassinated again and didn't want him to take any more risks. Qin Wenyin also didn't want to create more trouble for the Emperor Star Academy. He quietly cultivated by himself, and finally, a month after the assassination attempt, Qin Wenyin finally broke through to the arterial circulation realm, stepping into the final realm of the arterial circulation realm. He was only a step away from Yuanfu. After stepping into the 9th level of arterial circulation, Qin Wenyin cultivated for a few more days, stabilizing his foundation. At the same time, he didn't forget to cultivate his innate techniques. Currently, Qin Wenyin had finally mastered the 4th stance of the Thousand Hands imprint, the Kuji imprint. Its might was terrifying, and his falling mountain palms and berserk beast halberd technique were also perfected. Today, Qin Wenyin once again arrived at the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Qin Wenyin bowed to the old man. The old man opened his eyes, as a trace of vigor could be seen flickering in his eyes. "Are you confident?" "Let's give it a try," Qin Wenyin replied. The old man nodded his head and closed his eyes once again. Qin Wenyin walked past him and once again arrived at the unbroken door. What secrets did this so-called 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion contain? Crashing sounds echoed out as the divine energy in Qin Wenyan's body boiled. Taking a step forward, he lifted his palms and blasted out a palm imprint the size of a mountain. With a deafening boom, the door trembled, causing the heart of the old man to tremble as well. Qin Wenyin retreated a step, and the divine energy in his body continued to surge. He struck out once again, as both the falling mountain palms and the Kuji imprint simultaneously landed on the door. Boom! The terrifying rumbling sounds caused the entire Heavenly Star Pavilion to tremble. Many people inclined their heads and stared at the top of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Who was that? An ancient halberd appeared in Qin Wenyan's hands. Even if a cultivator at the arterial circulation realm were to use a high-grade divine weapon, there would still be a limit to its effectiveness. Hence, the old man didn't restrict him from using divine weapons to attack. In that instant, Qin Wenyan's blood began to boil. His entire person was akin to a demon as he took a step forward, and the ancient halberd exploded outwards, as though it was the sovereign of the world. Pooh! A light sound rang out. The eyes of the old man on the stairs abruptly opened, as a terrifying light flickered within. His heart trembled violently. Broken? Qin Wenyin had broken open that door. Qin Wenyan's heart was filled with excitement as he walked towards the final secret of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Behind this door, there was only a small space. What made Qin Wenyan bewildered was that this space wasn't as mystical as the first and second doors. Instead, there was only an ancient scroll. Qin Wenyan opened the scroll, as an expression of bewilderment appeared on his face. This should be a map. The final secret of the Heavenly Star Pavilion was actually a map left behind by the Azure Emperor. Qin Wenyan had never left Chu before, so he naturally wouldn't be able to understand the meaning of the map. He could only keep the scroll, and as he walked out, the old man appeared in front of him. Senior. Qin Wenyan bowed to the old man. From today onwards, the 8th and 9th levels of the Heavenly Star Pavilion will no longer exist. The 7th level will be open to the geniuses of the Emperor Star Academy. Everything that you have obtained here, you are not to speak of it to anyone else. The old man instructed. Understood. Qin Wenyan nodded his head. He understood the logic of treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Qin Wenyan didn't leave immediately. He stepped into the first door and headed towards the spirit beast grounds. However, he didn't meet many people, but instead he met many demonic beasts. Qin Wenyan didn't know that at this moment, the Emperor Star Academy was in an uproar. Outside the Emperor Star Academy, a group of elders and students stood together, as though they were welcoming someone. From afar, a group of silhouettes could be seen riding on powerful demonic beasts. Above them, the silhouettes stopped in the airspace above the Emperor Star Academy. Their gazes were sharp as they stared downwards, as though they were unexcelled in the world. If Qin Wenyan was here, he would have discovered that he was acquainted with one of the youths. It was none other than Yu Qingfeng, whom he had met in the Spirit Beast grounds. The Emperor Star Academy had also received the news 2 days ago that people from the Azure Emperor Palace would descend. As for the reason, the Emperor Star Academy wasn't clear. Not only the Azure Emperor Palace, there were also many experts descending on Chu today, insufferably arrogant. Xiaolan, who was in the royal palace, had his brows furrowed. He didn't expect that the news would still leak out. Back then, the Azure Emperor had come to Chu several times, hiding his greatest secret there. If this secret were to be exposed, not to mention a small country like Chu, even the entire Grand Xia would be shaken. Chapter 176. In the Spirit Beast grounds, Qin Wenyan had slain many demonic beasts and devoured their spirit beasts. But at this moment, his countenance was incomparably heavy. In front of Qin Wenyan, a gigantic demonic beast appeared. This demonic beast's entire body was shrouded in a golden glow and was over 4 meters tall. Its palms were the size of praying mats, and a single slap from it could kill a human. The golden primal ape was ranked number 3 in the War Beast Index, and possessed the golden primal ape constellation from the 5th heavenly layer. Its attack and defense were almost invincible, and what was even more terrifying was that its speed wasn't slow at all. However, at this moment, the golden primal ape wasn't feeling too good. It unceasingly panted heavily. This puny human in front of it was actually able to injure it. The blood in Qin Wenyan's body surged, and he was as handsome as a demon. His long black hair fluttered in the wind, and with the ancient halberd in his hands, he resembled a demonic god of war, unexcelled in the world. After breaking through to the 9th level of arterial circulation, he had also cultivated the fiend transformation art. His strength was many times stronger compared to the previous time he entered. Boom! The golden primal ape stomped on the ground, causing cracks to appear on the ground. Its gigantic palms slammed towards Qin Wenyan with a force even more violent than a mountain peak. Bzz! Qin Wenyan had the wings of a Garuda on his back, and his speed was as fast as lightning. He didn't retreat, but rather advanced instead. With a howl of rage, he soared into the air as his ancient halberd exploded outwards. Roar! The golden primal ape howled madly. That thunderous roar caused intense pain in Qin Wenyan's eardrums as his mind went numb. Qin Wenyan also howled in rage as a palm imprint blasted out towards the golden primal ape. However, the ancient halberd collided with the other palm of the golden primal ape as a terrifying sound echoed out. A man and a demonic beast clashed once more, causing the earth to crumble and the surrounding beasts to retreat. The frenzied battle continued for an hour. The golden primal ape was riddled with injuries, and Qin Wenyan wasn't in a good state either. His internal organs were all shaken, and this was only because he had been using the advantage of the Garuda movement technique to evade the attacks. Pucci! Finally seizing an opportunity, Qin Wenyan's ancient halberd pierced into the eyes of the golden primal ape. A thunderous roar shook the heavens as the golden primal ape went completely berserk. Qin Wenyan retreated, and after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the golden primal ape finally couldn't hold on any longer and was exhausted to death by Qin Wenyan. Naturally, Qin Wenyan didn't hesitate to devour the beast spirit. Qin Wenyan was extremely excited as he continued to search for prey in the spirit beast grounds. Finally, he encountered the Crimson Blood Thunder Hawk that was ranked number 5 in the Warbeast Index. Qin Wenyan pretended to flee and was even injured by the Crimson Blood Thunder Hawk. Only then did he manage to find an extremely rare opportunity to slay this demonic beast. After devouring so many beast spirits, the demonic aura exuding from him grew even more intense, especially when he executed the fiend transformation art. Outside, those from the Emperor's Star Academy welcomed the arrival of the experts from the Azure Emperor Palace. However, they didn't know that the purpose of the Azure Emperor Palace wasn't to stroll around, but rather, to understand the entire Emperor's Star Academy, and to find out where the Azure Emperor's secret could be hidden. In the air, a white crane flew over. Mo Qingqing was here today to deliver medicine to Qin Wenyan. Although Qin Wenyan had already recovered, and looked no different from an ordinary person, his heart was still injured after all. If he could use medicine to treat his injuries, it would be even more perfect. Grandfather. The white crane landed on the ground. Mo Qingqing couldn't help but have a bewildered expression on her face when she saw old Gu accompanying a group of people. She was naturally clear of the status of her grandfather in the Emperor Star Academy, yet he was actually personally receiving these uninvited guests. Qingqing, quickly come and pay your respects to the seniors of the Azure Emperor Palace. Old Gu smiled at Mo Qingqing, reminding her with his words in case Mo Qingqing said something inappropriate. Azure Emperor Palace. Mo Qingqing's heart trembled. She had heard of this transcendent power in the outside world. Junior Mo Qingqing pays her respects to the seniors. Mo Qingqing bowed to the crowd. Those from the Azure Emperor Palace were all contemplating Mo Qingqing, especially a few youths. Their gazes were filled with passion as they stared at Mo Qingqing. Who would have thought that there would actually be such a beauty in the small Chu country? Even in the Azure continent, there shouldn't be many females who could be compared to her. What a beautiful girl. I wonder if she's already married? A middle-aged man from the Azure Emperor Palace smiled. Qingqing is not 18 yet, I'm not married yet. Old Gu politely replied. It's about time. Mo Qingqing, how's your cultivation base? The middle-aged man asked. First level of Yuanfu. Mo Qingqing was extremely unhappy in her heart, but she still replied. The eyes of the middle-aged man suddenly lit up. Not even 18 years old, yet already at Yuanfu, not to mention her beauty. Not bad indeed. As he thought of this, he cast a glance at Yu Qingfeng who was standing beside him. Yu Qingfeng naturally understood the meaning of his father's words, and when he saw Mo Qingqing's beauty, his heart was stirred as well. Miss Qingqing, my name is Yu Qingfeng. Yu Qingfeng smiled, exuding a graceful demeanor. Such a scene caused the hearts of those from the Emperor's Star Academy to tremble. Old Gu wanted to grant Mo Qingqing and Qin Wenyan their marriage, but now that Yu Qingfeng had spoken, his intentions were clear. In the Chu country, although there were many outstanding geniuses who were secretly in love with Mo Qingqing, because of her background, if she wasn't willing, who would dare to mention it? However, Yu Qingfeng was different. He was someone from the Azure Emperor Palace. He naturally wouldn't care about Mo Qingqing's background. Mo Qingqing nodded her head to Yu Qingfeng, but she didn't reply. She silently cursed herself for coming at the wrong time. You juniors should go and have a chat. It's boring to accompany us here. The middle-aged man beside Yu Qingfeng was none other than his father. Yu Qingfeng was naturally more than willing. He stepped forward and smiled at Mo Qingqing. Miss Qingqing, let's go for a walk. Mo Qingqing was naturally unwilling in her heart, hence she didn't reply. Qingqing. At this moment, a silhouette walked over. Mo Qingqing turned, a gentle smile appeared on her face as she winked at Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan had already noticed the situation earlier, and when he saw Yu Qingfeng, his heart trembled. He had entered the spirit beast's realm before, and he knew that Yu Qingfeng was someone from the Azure Emperor Palace. And when he saw that Yu Qingfeng seemed to have the intention to woo Mo Qingqing, this made Qin Wenyan feel extremely uncomfortable. This feeling Qin Wenyin had never felt before. "Why you here?" Qin Wenyin walked to the side of Emo Qingqing and stretched out his hands, pulling on Emo Qingqing's dainty hands. Emo Qingqing's hands trembled as a hint of shyness flashed in her beautiful eyes. However, she knew Qin Wentian's intentions, hence she allowed him to pull on her hands as she gently smiled, "I'm here to deliver the medicine to you." Such a scene was witnessed by the others. Those from the Emperor Star Academy were all extremely worried. They didn't expect that the relationship between Qin Wenyan and Emo Qingqing would be so close. They didn't know if the people from the Azure Emperor Palace would blame them or not. Yu Qingfeng naturally recognized Qin Wenyan as well. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Wenyan, quickly come and pay your respects to the seniors from the Azure Emperor Palace." Old Gu spoke to Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan nodded his head, before bowing to those from the Azure Emperor Palace. Junior Qin Wenyan pays his respects to the seniors. The middle-aged man cast a glance at Qin Wenyan, as a sharp light flashed in his eyes. "Let's go." He spoke in a low voice as he led the crowd past Qin Wenyan, completely disregarding Qin Wenyan. Earlier, he had wanted to matchmake Yu Qingfeng and Emo Qingqing, but in the blink of an eye, his mood was ruined by a junior. Naturally, he felt that he had lost a lot of face. As for Qin Wenyan, he was merely a student from the Emperor Star Academy. How could he possibly place him in his eyes? "Brother Qin, we meet again." Yu Qingfeng spoke in a low voice as he passed by Qin Wenyan. After which, his eyes impolitely swept over Emo Qingqing, causing Qin Wenyan to furrow his brows, as a cold glint of light flickered in his eyes. After the crowd left, Emo Qingqing rolled her eyes at Qin Wenyan. Staring at the hand that was holding hers, she asked, "Are you still not going to let go?" Feeling that soft and delicate little hand, Qin Wenyan couldn't bear to let go. He lightly squeezed her hand, causing Emo Qingqing's face to redden. Only then did Qin Wenyan reluctantly release her hand. "Lecherous fellow." Emo Qingqing cursed in a low voice as she walked forward. However, on her countenance that could topple the world, a light smile could be seen. Like a shy young maiden, experiencing the first awakening of love. "I couldn't help myself." Qin Wenyan awkwardly smiled as he scratched his head. The him now was like an ordinary sunny youth. After catching up to Emo Qingqing, Qin Wenyan couldn't help but fall into a daze as he stared at her mischievous countenance. Traces of warmth flowed through his heart. This kind of feeling was something he had never experienced before. It was a wondrous feeling, a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of warmth. The people from the Azure Emperor Palace arrived at a great hall. Yu Qingfeng's father, Yu Hanshan, sat on the main seat, and on both sides of him were people from the Azure Emperor Palace. Those from the Emperor Star Academy were helpless as well. In fact, they had already had contact with the Azure Emperor Palace before. Back then, the matter of Luo Tianya was also resolved by the Azure Emperor Palace. However, the internal structure of the Azure Emperor Palace was also divided into factions, the direct line of descent of the Azure Emperor and the non-direct line of descent. Now, the direct line of descent of the Azure Emperor Palace was getting weaker and weaker, and their authority to speak in the Azure Emperor Palace was gradually lost. Those who came this time around were all from the non-direct line of descent. Yu Hanshan sat on the main seat, as his sharp gaze swept over the people from the Emperor Star Academy. From today onwards, the Heavenly Star Pavilion and the Astral River Hall will be temporarily controlled by my Azure Emperor Palace. Qingfeng, you guys go to the Dream Sky Forest to take a look. The countenances of those from the Emperor Star Academy stiffened. Not long ago, they had just introduced the Azure Emperor Palace to the Azure Emperor Palace. But, is there a problem? Yu Hanshan coldly asked upon seeing the frowns on the faces of those from the Emperor Star Academy. Nope, I just hope that it won't affect the cultivation of the students of the academy. Old Gu sighed in his heart. The Azure Emperor Palace was too powerful, they couldn't afford to offend them. Fine. In addition, you guys bring the people from the Azure Emperor Palace to the other secret locations of the Emperor Star Academy. Yu Hanshan spoke again, and the Emperor Star Academy could only agree. These people seem to be searching for something. Go on. Yu Hanshan waved his hands, and the people from the Emperor's Star Academy departed. Very quickly, only Yu Hanshan, Yu Qingfeng and his son remained. Father, is there a possibility that the secret of the Azure Emperor is hidden here? Yu Qingfeng asked. Yu Hanshan rubbed the center of his brows as he closed his eyes and replied in a low voice. The Azure Emperor's faction managed to find some notes left behind by the Azure Emperor, revealing that he had visited this place many times before. If we can really find the secret, Qingfeng, your future would be incomparably bright. Yu Qingfeng's heart trembled. Back then, the Azure Emperor was ranked first among the 36 heavenly dippers of Grand Xia. His combat prowess was terrifying, and no matter how talented his opponents were, he was invincible among those of the same level. This was the ironclad rule of cultivation. The Azure Emperor didn't only have a single Yuanfu. 4 stellar martial cultivators, their arterial pathways would transform into whirlpools, and they would only have a single Yuanfu in their bodies. However, the Azure Emperor had broken this ironclad rule. He had multiple Yuanfu, and every stellar martial cultivator knew what that signified. It signified that he could store astral energy several times more than others, and could nurture astral novas in different Yuanfu. How could his combat prowess not be terrifying? Chapter 177. There were many experts from the royal capital of Chu, but none of them interfered in the matters of the Emperor's Star Academy or the royal clan. To them, these were all insignificant matters. The people from the Azure Emperor Palace caused a huge commotion in the Emperor's Star Academy. Although they promised the academy that they wouldn't disturb the students, they weren't so polite when they searched the academy. The innate techniques in the Heavenly Star Pavilion were all turned upside down, and they even discovered the entrance to the Spirit Beast's domain on the 7th level. However, the insides of the other 2 doors had already been destroyed, and only the basic innate techniques were stored within. What made the people from the Emperor's Star Academy even angrier was that when those from the Azure Emperor Palace saw some of the more powerful innate techniques, they directly took them away. What was even more outrageous was that they wanted to tear down the Emperor's Star Monument. This monument was the symbol of the Emperor's Star Academy, and it bore witness to the history of the academy. At this moment, there were many people gathered in front of the Emperor's Star Monument. Ren Qianxing, Old Gu, and the rest were all here. Even the old man that Qin Wenyan had seen before, who was guarding the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, appeared as well. They stared at the people from the Azure Emperor Palace as they spoke. This monument is the blood and sweat of the Azure Emperor and records the history of the academy. Everyone, please show some mercy. You should be the current headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy, the descendant of the Azure Emperor, Dai, right? Yu Hanshan stared at the old man, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. The old man calmly replied, causing many of the people from the Emperor's Star Academy to be shocked. This inconspicuous old man was actually the headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy. So it turned out that the position of the headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy had always been inherited by the descendant of the Azure Emperor. They had always been silently protecting the Emperor's Star Academy, and as for the inner workings of the Emperor's Star Academy, they had no way of knowing. Dai, you should be clear of my purpose in coming here. The Emperor's Star Monument must be torn down no matter what. Yu Hanshan's gaze was calm, yet there was an indisputable intent in it. Too ruthless. The surrounding students all had expressions of anger on their faces, yet they didn't dare to say anything. The Azure Emperor Palace and the Emperor's Star Academy are of the same lineage. How can they be so overboard? From afar, Mo Qingqing and Qin Wenyan stood together. Mo Qingqing was frowning. She was extremely angry. The Azure Emperor Palace had gone too far. Miss Qingqing, it's impossible for the Emperor's Star Academy to control the will of the Azure Emperor Palace. The 2 of them are not on the same level. Yu Qingfeng gazed at Mo Qingqing as a warm smile appeared on his face. Every time he looked at this young lady, he would feel a different kind of emotion stirring in his heart. Seeing the look in Yu Qingfeng's eyes, Mo Qingqing clenched her fists tightly. Why don't Mo Qingqing come with me to the Azure Emperor Palace? It's much better than staying here. Yu Qingfeng joked, yet his words were laced with hints of teasing. You are too presumptuous. Qin Wentian's eyes were filled with rage. However, he only saw Yu Qingfeng's eyes flashing with a cold light as he stared at Qin Wenyin. He then laughed coldly. "Brother Qin, do you really think that this is the land of spirit beasts?" After speaking, his silhouette transformed into a series of afterimages as a terrifying pressure gushed forth towards Qin Wenyin. Not only that, this was within the grounds of the Emperor's Star Academy. How arrogant could he be? Naturally, Yu Qingfeng was confident that with his strength, he would be able to suppress Qin Wenyin. After all, they had already seen each other's strength in the spirit beast's grounds. Yu Qingfeng blasted out with a palm strike that was incomparably ferocious, containing an indomitable will. Not only that, it contained a terrifying sharpness that could slash apart everything, capable of directly killing people. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened as he blasted out with his falling mountain palms. The two palms collided, causing a deafening sound to ring out. Qin Wenyin was forced backwards as he groaned in agony. Fresh blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The gazes of many in the crowd were all filled with shock in their hearts. This Yu Qingfeng was so tyrannical, yet his strength was so strong that he could actually injure Qin Wenyin. The members of the Azure Emperor Palace acted as though nothing had happened. The aura that erupted from Qin Wenyin was merely at the 8th level of arterial circulation. Given Yu Qingfeng's strength, killing him was as easy as flipping his palms. However, Emo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flickered as she stared at Qin Wenyin. This fellow had become smarter. Emo Qingqing was very clear that Qin Wenyin had already stepped into the 9th level of arterial circulation. That earlier strike was obviously done intentionally, concealing his true strength. If not, Emo Qingqing didn't believe that Yu Qingfeng would be able to defeat Qin Wenyin. Destroy. At this moment, Yu Hanshan coldly spat out. Those from the Azure Emperor Palace blasted out with their palms, causing thunderous rumbling sounds to echo out as the Emperor Star Monument shattered into pieces. No! Luo Huan's beautiful eyes turned red as she witnessed the destruction of the Emperor Star Monuments. She was extremely enraged. The rumbling sounds continued unceasingly as the Emperor Star Monuments crumbled one by one. The members of the Azure Emperor Palace started to inspect the shattered monuments, yet they didn't discover anything. "Miss Qingqing, if you have time, let's go out for a walk." Before Yu Qingfeng left, he smiled at Emo Qingqing. Staring at her beautiful countenance, his heart pounded with excitement. Even if she couldn't become his wife, if he could obtain her body, wouldn't that be an extremely exciting matter? As he thought of this, the blood in Yu Qingfeng's heart surged. Casting a glance at Emo Qingqing, a meaningful smile appeared on his face as he turned and departed. Emo Qingqing bit her lips, as though she had suffered an intense humiliation. However, she did her best to endure it. Blood seeped out from the corner of her lips. Luo Huan walked up and squatted down in a daze. The current her was much more haggard than before, and she no longer had the radiance of the past. Those from the Emperor's Star Academy also stood there in silence. They felt wronged and angry, yet they didn't dare to say anything. Qin Wenyin clenched his fists as he stared at the departing back of Yu Qingfeng. A terrifying cold light flickered in his eyes. It was a killing intent. Qin Wenyin stared at the back of Yu Qingfeng. Stretching out his hands, Qin Wenyin grabbed hold of Emo Qingqing's dainty hands, causing Emo Qingqing to freeze. She turned her eyes and smiled sweetly at Qin Wenyin, causing Qin Wentian's heart to involuntarily tremble. "Let's go." Qin Wenyin held onto Emo Qingqing's hand as they departed. In the spirit beast's grounds, Qin Wenyin once again began his slaughter of demonic beasts. Even the demonic beasts ranked within the top 10 couldn't withstand his slaughter. Qin Wenyin arrived at the peak of a mountain. He halted his steps as he stared at the peak of the mountain ahead. There was an extremely strange demonic beast there. It had the head of a dragon, the body of a lion, the wings of a great rock, the scales of a xuanwu, the tail of a snake, and the claws of a kirin. Demon Sovereign. Qin Wenyin drew in a deep breath. This was the number 1 ranked demonic beast in the Warbeast Index. In the Warbeast Index, there was only a description of its form, but not its abilities. Qin Wenyin could tell with a single glance that this was the Demon Sovereign. The eyes of the demon sovereign were incomparably cold, and its entire body shone with a terrifying astral light. Those eyes of his seemed capable of affecting the souls of those who looked at him. With the ancient halberd in his hands, Qin Wentian's silhouette transformed into a shadow as he dashed towards the demon sovereign. His purpose in coming to the spirit beast's grounds, other than to temper himself, was naturally to hunt the top-ranked demonic beasts in the War Beast Index. Now that he had encountered the number 1 ranked demonic beast, how could he let it go? The astral light was so dazzling that it pierced the eyes of those who looked at it. A resplendent light abruptly lit up the skies as a roar shook the heavens and earth. Numerous demonic beasts appeared beside the demon sovereign, all of them howling in a frenzy. This caused Qin Wentian to halt his steps as he stared in shock at the scene before him. Summoned beasts, the number 1 ranked demon sovereign in the War Beast Index is actually a summoned beast. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. This was a beast that he had dreamed of. But as he stared at the demonic beasts, Qin Wentian grew wary again, his countenance solemn. Wang. A raging wind swept past as Qin Wentian seemed to have transformed into a true Kuanping. The ancient halberd pierced out in fury, and an azure dragon roared. With a deafening boom, the body of a demonic beast exploded. However, Qin Wentian's body did not pause for even a moment. Executing the vermilion bird stance, the ancient halberd swept out horizontally as the demonic beasts roared. 2 days later, Qin Wentian walked out of the spirit beast's grounds wearily. Shaking his head, he felt extremely uncomfortable. In order to hunt the number 1 ranked demon sovereign in the War Beast Index, he had spent a whole 2 days and used all sorts of methods to finally slay the demon sovereign and plunder the beast spirit. Such a harvest made Qin Wentian exceptionally excited. Wentian. As Qin Wentian was walking in the Emperor's Star Academy, a voice drifted over. Qin Wentian turned his head, only to see Mo Qingqing walking in his direction. Only then did a smile appear on his cold face. Behind her, Yu Qingfeng followed closely behind. These 2 days, Mo Qingqing had been enduring Yu Qingfeng's harassment. Qin Wentian walked to the side of Mo Qingqing and asked in a low voice, "Has he always been like this?" Mo Qingqing nodded her head, as though she had been wronged. "Let's go out for a walk." Qin Wentian pulled Mo Qingqing along with a smile. Mo Qingqing nodded her head, and the two of them sprinted out of the Emperor's Star Academy. Upon seeing how close Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing were, the people in the academy felt some jealousy towards Qin Wentian, but they still silently wished that the two of them would have a good future together. Yu Qingfeng narrowed his eyes, as a cold light flickered within. He watched as Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing left. The people from the Azure Emperor Palace were getting more and more overboard, turning the entire Emperor's Star Academy upside down, yet they still couldn't find what they were looking for. Yu Qingfeng, on the other hand, felt somewhat bored. Occasionally, he would accompany a group of youths from the Azure Emperor Palace to take a walk outside the Emperor's Star Academy. But today, there was actually a group of idiots who offended the Azure Emperor Palace, resulting in a conflict between both parties. Not only that, the other party had a Yuanfu realm cultivator among them, suppressing the youths from the Azure Emperor Palace. How could the arrogant youths from the Azure Emperor Palace accept this? They came here to temper themselves, yet in a small place like Chu, there were actually people who dared to antagonize them? They were simply courting death. Those from the Azure Emperor Palace delayed the movements of the other party, allowing Yu Qingfeng to return and call for reinforcements. Yu Qingfeng immediately headed in the direction of the Emperor's Star Academy, but when he passed by a desolate area, a black-robed figure blocked his path of retreat. This black-robed figure had his head lowered, wielding a long spear in his hands as he slowly walked forward. "Who the hell are you?" Yu Qingfeng halted his steps as he coldly asked. He didn't expect that there would actually be someone who wanted to kill him in broad daylight. Yu Qingfeng wasn't a fool. He could faintly sense that someone was intentionally targeting him. If not, how could there be such a coincidence? "The person who wants your life." A cold voice rang out. The black-robed man transformed into a blur as a beam of light shot out from his spear. A terrifying demonic chi gushed forth as the spear vibrated, transforming into a terrifying vortex that contained boundless energy. Yu Qingfeng inclined his head, staring at the incoming figure. Upon seeing the owner of the pair of eyes, his heart violently pounded. "It's you!" Yu Qingfeng lifted his palms to attack. An indomitable palm imprint collided with the long spear, causing a piercing sound to echo out. After which, a scream of agony could be heard. The long spear directly pierced through his palms, before penetrating through his throat, nailing Yu Qingfeng to the ground. 9th level of arterial circulation. Yu Qingfeng's eyes were wide open, as he died with a grievance. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that he would die in a small country like Chu. Chapter 178. In the Emperor Star Academy, Yu Qingfeng's corpse lay quietly on the ground. A long spear had pierced through his throat, nailing him to death. In front of the corpse, Yu Hanshan's body trembled. He didn't dare to believe, nor was he willing to believe, that his son, Yu Qingfeng, would be killed by someone during this trip to Chu. His eyes were bloodshot, as a towering killing intent gushed forth from him. The students of the Emperor Star Academy all retreated far away, rejoicing in their hearts at Yu Qingfeng's misfortune. During this period of time, those from the Azure Emperor Palace had been too arrogant, destroying everything in the Emperor Star Academy. Now, they finally received their punishment. This Yu Qingfeng must have been too arrogant, which led to the enmity between him and the Azure Emperor Palace, resulting in his death. Investigate thoroughly. Yu Hanshan howled in rage, his voice reverberating throughout the entire Emperor Star Academy. Qin Wendian sat in his own courtyard, with a map in his hands, as though nothing had happened. Upon hearing Yu Qingfeng's howl, he inclined his head and cast a glance at the horizon, his countenance calm. If he didn't kill Yu Qingfeng, Mo Qingqing wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Hence, he had to die. The heart of that immature youth, under such a cruel environment, had gradually turned cold. As long as someone threatened the people around him, he would rather become a cold-blooded god of slaughter. Lowering his head to look at the map in his hands, Qin Wentian's finger landed on a certain location. There were words written on it. This is the demon continent of the 9 continents. The location marked on the map should be located in a vast forested mountain range outside the demon continent. Qin Wendian stared at the terrain. The land of the 9 continents was boundlessly vast. Sometimes, a forest or a mountain range was even larger than an entire country. For example, the dark forest of Chu, it encompassed the entire royal capital, making it impossible for anyone to find out what secrets were hidden within. The forested mountain range marked on the map occupied an extremely large area. Qin Wendian stared at the location marked on the map. That location was within the forested mountain range, within a certain small city. Qin Wendian didn't know what secrets the Azure Emperor had left behind in the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Wendian. At this moment, a voice drifted over. Qin Wendian inclined his head, only to see Old Gu and Mo Qingqing descending from the air. Old Gu, Qingqing. Qin Wendian kept the map and stood up. Yu Qingfeng is dead. Old Gu glanced at Qin Wendian, only to see that Qin Wentian's countenance was as calm as ever. Old Gu instantly understood what was going on, and immediately changed the topic. I've already found out the reason why the Azure Emperor Palace came to the Emperor Star Academy. Why did you come? Qin Wendian saw that Old Gu didn't continue talking about Yu Qingfeng's death. The 3 of them had a tacit understanding that the Emperor Star Academy naturally wouldn't investigate too seriously. With regards to the arrival of the Azure Emperor Palace, Qin Wendian was extremely curious. There are 2 major factions within the Azure Emperor Palace. One of them is the direct line of descent of the Azure Emperor. Sect leader Dai is the representative of this line of descent in the Emperor Star Academy and has countless connections with the Emperor Star Academy. The other faction consists of the people who came here today. We received news from the Azure faction that the Azure Emperor hid the greatest secret of his life in the Emperor Star Academy. Xiao Lan from the 9 Mystical Palace came here because of this. The secret of the Azure Emperor? Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened. Yes, the secret of the Azure Emperor. Back then, no matter what cultivation level the Azure Emperor was at, no matter what kind of experts he faced, he would always be invincible. This was all because of his unique cultivation method. The Azure Emperor had cultivated multiple palaces, and after this secret was exposed, countless experts in the Grand Xia Empire started to pursue the Azure Emperor. Before the Azure Emperor disappeared, he might have made a trip to the Emperor Star Academy that he founded. Multiple palaces? Qin Wentian's heart trembled. For stellar martial cultivators, they could only form a single Yuanfu Si. This was something he was very clear about. After that, the astral novas would also be nurtured from the Yuanfu. Yes, it might be a heaven-defying cultivation art, but nobody knows where it is. Old Gu continued, yet Qin Wentian's heart involuntarily trembled. Map, the map of the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. If it was that map, then Dai, who was the guardian of the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, should be able to vaguely guess where it was located, right? For thousands of years, no one had managed to break through the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Could it be that this was the death order of the Azure Emperor? However, you don't have to bother about this matter, it has nothing to do with you. I'm here to tell you that Qingqing wants to go out for a walk. Why don't you accompany her to relax? Old Gu spoke to Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan cast a glance at Old Gu and Mo Qingqing. Upon seeing their gazes, how could he not understand Old Gu's intentions? Those from the Azure Emperor Palace thought that he was only at the 8th level of arterial circulation. Not only that, he was injured by Yu Qingfeng in a single strike. Naturally, they wouldn't suspect him. However, Old Gu and Mo Qingqing faintly knew that he had the ability to kill Yu Qingfeng. They should have already guessed it, and thus, they hoped that he would leave this place. If not, his strength would be exposed in the future. Not only that, when Old Gu spoke of leaving, he was most probably referring to leaving Chu temporarily. Currently, the Emperor Star Academy was in a state of conflict with the royal clan, and the Azure Emperor Palace was also here. This was a period of trouble, and the Emperor Star Academy wanted him to stay far away from them. This way he, Qin Wenyan, wouldn't be in danger. Old Gu's intentions could be said to be extremely meticulous. After a moment of silence, Qin Wenyan heavily nodded his head. Okay. Make your preparations, we'll set off immediately. Old Gu patted Qin Wenyan on his shoulders before departing the area. I'll go inform my father and my sister. Qin Wenyan stared at Mo Qingqing. I'll wait for you. Mo Qingqing nodded her head. Qin Wenyan separately informed Qin Chuan, Qin Yao, as well as Fan Le, that if they wished to leave, they must remember to use the protection of the Emperor Star Academy. After instructing everything, Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing left in a low-profile manner. They first exited the Emperor Star Academy, before riding on a white crane and soaring through the skies. The white crane flew westwards, and Qin Wenyan stood atop it, gazing at the royal capital that was getting further and further away. His eyes were filled with reluctance to part. The reason why Qin Wenyan agreed to Old Gu's suggestion was because he was very clear of the current situation. He didn't even have the qualifications to participate in the conflict. Hence, he chose to temporarily leave. Very soon I'll be back. Qin Wenyan silently vowed in his heart. In this royal capital, there were many people he couldn't bear to part with. He truly couldn't bear to leave, but he had to improve himself. What are you thinking about? Mo Qingqing walked to the side of Qin Wenyan as she asked in a low voice. Qingqing, after you send me out, let's go back. I might need to go to a place very far away. Qin Wenyan turned his head, looking at Mo Qingqing as a warm smile appeared on his face. Didn't you say that you would accompany me to relax? Mo Qingqing rebuked as she stared at Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan bitterly smiled, placing both his hands on Mo Qingqing's shoulders as he seriously stated, I really need to go to a very far place, and there's a possibility that I might encounter danger. There's no need for you to accompany me on this dangerous journey. Mo Qingqing stared at Qin Wenyan, not saying a word. Her beautiful countenance was just inches away from his, and her watery eyes were filled with a hint of bitterness, causing a warm current to flow through Qin Wentian's heart. Stretching out his hand, he moved it towards Mo Qingqing's face. Qin Wentian's heart pounded rapidly. He was even more nervous than when he was in combat. Finally, Qin Wentian's palm landed on Mo Qingqing's face. Her soft and crystalline skin caused Qin Wentian's heartbeat to quicken even more. He seriously stared at Mo Qingqing's face, as though he was afraid that Mo Qingqing would be angry. "I'll accompany you." Mo Qingqing continued to stare at him as she spat out these 4 words. Qin Wentian bitterly smiled, but seeing the bitterness and determination in her eyes, he could only nod his head. "That's more like it." Mo Qingqing smiled sweetly, causing Qin Wentian's heartbeat to quicken even more. This was the first time he saw her smile at such a close distance. It was too beautiful, too breathtaking. "I haven't taken enough advantage of you." Mo Qingqing's lips twitched as she glared at Qin Wenin. Only then did Qin Wenin retract his trembling hands as he sat on the back of the white crane. However, he still felt a sweetness in his heart. Only when he was together with Mo Qingqing would he feel this kind of warmth and sweetness. Mo Qingqing sat beside Qin Wenin. The speed of the white crane was extremely fast, as a strong gust of wind buffeted their bodies. The devilishly handsome young man and the devastatingly beautiful young lady sat together, shuttling through the clouds, resembling a celestial couple. "Where are we going?" A gentle smile could be seen on Mo Qingqing's face as she asked Qin Wentian, who was beside her. Qin Wentian took out a map and pointed to the marked location, outside of the demon continent. "If we fly according to the route marked on the map, I'm afraid it will take quite some time before we arrive." "Where did you get this map from?" Mo Qingqing stared at Qin Wentian in bewilderment. "The 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, the map left behind by the Azure Emperor. Your grandfather told us about the secret of the Azure Emperor, and I'm guessing that there's a high possibility that it's located here." Qin Wentian pointed to the marked location. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes froze. The secret of the Azure Emperor? Qin Wentian had actually told her without any reservations. As she thought of this, a sweet feeling flowed in Mo Qingqing's heart as she smiled and nodded her head. She was truly happy to have such trust in him. The gust of wind buffeted the map, and after determining the direction, Qin Wentian kept it. The white crane flew westwards, passing by the towns and villages below, as well as the mountains and forests, heading towards a faraway place. This was the first time Qin Wentian had gone to such a faraway place, and it was also the first time Mo Qingqing had gone on a long journey. Before this, she had never left Chu before. In their hearts, there were traces of trepidation, as well as hints of warmth. Because the person they were traveling together with was the other party. In the hearts of the handsome man and the young lady, the seeds of love sprouted for the first time. Chapter 179. A few thousand miles away from the demon continent, there was a boundlessly vast forest that spanned across countless territories. In this boundless territory, there would occasionally be demonic beasts soaring through the air, whistling through the air. Early in the morning, a white crane could be seen floating in the air. On the back of the white crane, a handsome young man and a beautiful young lady could be seen sitting on it. The young lady's head was resting on the shoulders of the handsome young man as she gently leaned against him. The handsome young man's eyes were wide open, but he didn't move an inch, as though he was afraid that he would disturb the young lady. These two people were naturally Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing. Mo Qingqing's eyelashes fluttered as she slowly opened her eyes. Her crystal-like eyes flickered as she moved her head away. A faint blush could be seen on her cheeks. "You're awake." Qin Wentian stared at the haggard countenance of Mo Qingqing, as traces of heartache could be seen in his heart. On their way here, they had taken many detours, asked many people, and spent over 20 days. Although the speed of the white crane was much faster compared to them, it was still a 7th-level demonic beast after all. Its speed was still limited. Mo Qingqing lightly nodded her head as she stared ahead. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. The boundless forest was so vast that they couldn't see the end of it. If the dark forest was placed here, it would only be a corner. Qin Wentian took out the map, and after looking at the marked location, he passed it to Mo Qingqing. "We're almost there. Help me control the direction of the white crane." Emo Qingcheng lightly nodded her head as the white crane continued advancing. In this vast territory, they actually flew for half a day, yet they still hadn't found the marked location. But the direction is wrong. Emo Qingcheng frowned. In such a vast territory, it was possible that the direction was wrong. There's someone there. Qin Wentian's gaze shifted to the horizon, only to see a few demonic beasts soaring through the air. Those people also saw the white crane, and as they neared, their eyes brightened when they saw the two of them. The handsome young man and the breathtaking young lady caused them to involuntarily cast a few more glances at them. "Sir, are you going to Demon Mountain City?" the other party asked the two of them. There really is a Demon Mountain City. Qin Wentian glanced at the map. The place marked on the map was in the Demon Mountain City. "Yes, how far is it?" Qin Wentian asked. "We're almost there." One of the young men glanced at Emo Qingcheng from time to time. Humans love to be beautiful, and with Emo Qingcheng's beauty, she completely outshone his companions. "It's more important to hurry." The maiden beside Emo Qingcheng was frowning, appearing somewhat unhappy. She was clad in a blue dress, exuding a sense of elegance and elegance. She was originally also extremely beautiful, but when compared to Emo Qingcheng, her beauty naturally paled in comparison. She was naturally unhappy when she saw the gazes of those around her staring at Emo Qingcheng. "All right." The young men seemed to be more obedient to her. The demonic beasts and the white cranes flew away, but the young men's eyes were still filled with nostalgia. Qin Wentian had a bitter smile on his face as he glanced at Emo Qingcheng. As the saying goes, femme fatale. If a girl was too beautiful, it would naturally attract the attention of others. He didn't know if bringing Emo Qingcheng along was the right decision. "Are you unhappy?" Emo Qingcheng noticed the expression on Qin Wentian's face as she asked in a low voice. "I don't like them looking at you all the time." Qin Wentian smiled and shrugged his shoulders. "But I'm afraid I'll have to get used to the fact that my eyes are on someone else's body." "You're jealous." Emo Qingcheng's beautiful eyes flickered. Qin Wentian didn't say anything, which could be considered as a tacit agreement. This caused Emo Qingcheng to feel a sweetness in her heart. "Did you bring any clothes with you?" Emo Qingcheng asked Qin Wentian. "Qin Wentian nodded. "Let me take a look at your clothes." Emo Qingcheng smiled. Qin Wentian didn't understand, but he still took out a few sets of clothes. Under his dumbstruck gaze, Emo Qingcheng draped his clothes over her body, covering her exquisite figure. She even tied her long hair together and wrapped a piece of cloth around her forehead. Her appearance was somewhat out of place, but she still exuded a sense of masculinity. "How about this?" Emo Qingcheng waved her hands. Qin Wentian contemplated Emo Qingcheng. Although she exuded a sense of masculinity, her sparkling skin and flawless countenance couldn't be concealed. However, this nondescript appearance wasn't as breathtaking as earlier and wouldn't attract as much attention. Humans would always love to be beautiful. Emo Qingcheng dressing herself up like this caused Qin Wentian to feel touched in his heart. He stretched out his hands and held onto Emo Qingcheng's dainty hands. Emo Qingcheng and Qin Wentian finally saw the Demon Mountain City marked on the map. When the white crane landed in the airspace above the city, Emo Qingcheng's mouth was agape, as an expression of shock could be seen on her face. The entire city was surrounded by towering mountain ranges. They passed through the gaps between the mountain peaks and stared downwards at the city below, only to see pieces of ancient boulders piled up into the city, exuding a majestic aura. Naturally, this city didn't seem that big from the air, but that was only because the surrounding mountain ranges were too vast. This city wasn't any smaller than the Chu country's royal capital, and there were many people living in it. It was hard to imagine that in the depths of a vast mountain range, there would actually be a city like this. "Let's descend." Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice as the white crane landed in the Demon Mountain City. Other than humans, there were also many demonic beasts roaming about. These demonic beasts weren't under the control of Wu Xiu, but rather, they roamed about freely. Humans and demonic beasts actually coexisted peacefully here. One couldn't help but say that this was a strange city. No wonder it was named the Demon Mountain City. Qin Wentian took out the map again. The location marked on the map was in the center of the city, where a majestic palace could be seen. The secret of the Azure Emperor isn't in the Emperor Star Academy, he only hid a map there. If there really is a heaven-defying cultivation art that can allow one to obtain multiple palaces, what would await me in the future? Qin Wenyin murmured in his heart, as he and Mo Qingqing took a stroll in the Demon Mountain City. At this moment, the earth trembled as a demonic beast galloped madly through the streets. The crowd hurriedly gave way to it. Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing turned around, only to see a berserk eagle-eyed lion rushing towards them. Its immense strength trampled the ground, and on the back of the eagle-eyed lion, a young man roared in rage, "Scram!" Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing retreated to the side as the eagle-eyed lion rushed over. The eyes of the young man on the back of the eagle-eyed lion were as sharp as an eagle's. He swept his gaze over to Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing, and upon seeing Mo Qingqing's delicate features, he involuntarily opened his mouth and spat out flames. The intense flames gushed towards Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing, causing the two of them to retreat with furrowed brows. A devilish smile appeared on the face of the young man as he glanced at Mo Qingqing. If it's a girl, I'm afraid that her looks wouldn't lose out to those from the Celestial Lake Palace. After which, he laughed uproariously as he departed. The surrounding crowd, upon hearing the roar of the young man, started to size up Mo Qingqing. Indeed, although she was dressed as a man, her delicate features couldn't be concealed. Qin Wenyin furrowed his brows, only to see Mo Qingqing pulling on his hand. "Let's continue on our way." Mo Qingqing knew that it was best to keep a low profile when they were outside. The experts here were as common as the clouds, unlike the small Chu country. It was best to be more cautious. "I've wronged you." Qin Wenyin sighed. He could only blame himself for not having enough strength. If not, how could Mo Qingqing have suffered such grievances? In that case, you better hurry up and become stronger. Mo Qingqing didn't mind it as she laughed. The two of them continued on their way, and when they arrived at the location indicated on the map, they saw a vast palace in front of them. On the outermost gate, there were 3 gigantic words engraved on it: Celestial Lake Palace. This was the Celestial Lake Palace that the arrogant young man on the back of the demonic beast had spoken of. This was the location indicated on the map by the Azure Emperor. A cry of surprise rang out, as several people turned their gazes in the direction of Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing. These people were none other than the young man and woman they had met in the air earlier. "Seems like fate has brought us together. You guys also wish to go to the Celestial Lake Palace?" The young man smiled at Qin Wenyin as he saw Mo Qingqing's disguise. "What kind of place is the Celestial Lake Palace?" Qin Wenyin curiously asked. He really wanted to know the purpose of the Celestial Lake Palace marked on the map by the Azure Emperor. The Celestial Lake Palace is the symbol of the Demon Mountain City. 3,000 years ago, the Demon Mountain City was established by the demonic fairy Qingmei. After 3,000 years of development, the Demon Mountain City gradually developed into a city. In the past, the Demon Mountain City was merely a place where demonic beasts roamed freely. Now, as you can see, it's extremely lively. Not only that, the Celestial Lake Palace also has many beautiful fairies. That young man laughed as he continued, "Naturally, compared to her, even the fairies of the Celestial Lake Palace are inferior." As he spoke, he cast a glance at Mo Qingqing, but his gaze was very vague. 3,000 years ago. Qin Wenyin murmured. In that case, she should be someone from the same era as the Azure Emperor. Could it be that Qingmei was a demon that had taken human form? Does the Celestial Lake Palace only accept females? If that's the case, why are there so many people here? Qin Wenyin curiously asked. Yes, Fairy Qingmei only accepts females, and all of them must be beautiful. As for why she doesn't accept males, let's start from the rumors of the Azure Emperor. Back then, the Azure Emperor was ranked number 1 among the 36 heavenly Dipper sovereigns. What kind of heavens chosen was he? Countless females admired him, but he had a love affair with Fairy Qingmei of the Demon Continent. However, for some unknown reason, the Azure Emperor abandoned Fairy Qingmei, causing her love to turn into hatred. There were even rumors saying that she pursued the Azure Emperor to kill him. Only after the news of the Azure Emperor's death did Fairy Qingmei begin to live in seclusion in the Demon Mountain City. The young man seemed to be very interested, as he spoke with fervor and assurance. It was as though he wanted to show off. Your humble servant is Yi Xiang of the Demon Continent. How may I address you too? Qin Wendian, this is my girlfriend. Qin Wendian replied in a low voice. It wouldn't be good for him to brush off the other party's feelings, but his mind started to race. If Fairy Qingmei really had a relationship with the Azure Emperor, this meant that he hadn't found the wrong place. The location marked on the Azure Emperor's map should be this place. Chapter 180. When Mo Qingqing heard Qin Wendian say the words girlfriend, a hint of shyness could be seen in her eyes. Her lips curled into a sweet smile. Evidently, in her heart, she had already acknowledged this relationship. However, Mo Qingqing had a strange feeling. She already had someone she liked? If it was a year ago, she wouldn't even dare to think about it. Yi Xiang, on the other hand, felt a tinge of disappointment in his heart. The reason why he wanted to get close to Qin Wendian was naturally because he had seen Mo Qingqing's countenance. I see. Yi Xiang smiled as he nodded his head. Yet in his heart he was cursing Qin Wendian for being so lucky. What kind of background did he have? Thinking of this, Yi Xiang probed further. As for why we're here, Brother Qin, don't you know? Which city is Brother Qin from in the 9-state city? Indeed, I don't know. I'm not from the 9 continents. Qin Wendian didn't explain too clearly. The reason why the Celestial Lake Palace is called the Celestial Lake Palace is because it has a natural celestial lake. It's extremely beneficial to cultivators, especially those below the Heavenly Dipper realm. Back then, when Fairy Qingmei discovered it, it caused quite a commotion. Many transcendent powers wanted to take it for themselves, but what kind of character was the Azure Emperor back then? All the transcendent powers had to give in to him, and no one dared to compete with Fairy Qingmei. Yi Xiang explained. After the news of the Azure Emperor's death spread out, Fairy Qingmei decided to seclude herself here. Many transcendent powers voiced their objections, not wanting Fairy Qingmei to monopolize the Celestial Lake. However, Fairy Qingmei said that all the talented youths in the 9 continents could come here at any time to take the test, and those who passed the test would be able to cultivate in the Celestial Lake. Only then did the transcendent powers give up. After all, no one was willing to offend Fairy Qingmei. Qin Wendian understood. Demonic beasts were different from humans. The majority of demonic beasts cultivated very slowly, but their lifespans were much longer compared to humans. Demonic beasts that could transform into human form were all at the Heavenly Dipper realm. As long as they weren't killed by humans, it wouldn't be a problem for them to live for 5,000 to 6,000 years. Naturally, those transcendent powers wouldn't dare to offend Fairy Qingmei. In other words, everyone here wants to use the celestial pond to cultivate? Qin Wendian glanced at the people around him. Indeed, most of them were young people between the ages of 16 to 25. Moreover, all of them had extraordinary temperament. Presumably, they would not dare to come here without some strength. Just as Qin Wendian was sizing up his surroundings, a pair of eyes shot towards him from afar. Immediately after, a devilish smile appeared on the face of that person. It was the arrogant person who had been riding on the eagle-eyed lion. Yi Xiang followed the direction of Qin Wendian's gaze, and upon seeing that person his countenance changed. He then stated in a low voice, "He's from the transcendent power of the Demon Continent, the Beast King Hall." Half-beastman? Qin Wendian's eyes flashed. Yi Xiang walked to Qin Wendian's side as he explained in a light voice, "The Lord of the Beast King Hall is a Lion King at the Heavenly Dipper realm. The Beast King is extremely lecherous and has married many human females, giving birth to many half-beastmen. Their descendants are all half-beastmen, and this Shiki is also a descendant of the Beast King." "Little brat, what are you mumbling about?" Shiki coldly stated, his words causing Yi Xiang's countenance to change. Smiling, he replied, "Just chatting casually." "Is that so?" Shiki glanced at the young lady behind Yi Xiang as his tongue twitched, flickering with a greedy light. This caused the countenance of the young lady to be filled with rage. The descendants of the Beast King were truly licentious and had no sense of shame. Now, they even dared to cause trouble for the Celestial Lake Palace. At this moment, within the Celestial Lake Palace, a few young ladies clad in white walked out with the grace of celestial maidens. Momentarily, the gazes of the crowd shifted over as they stared at the silhouettes with veils covering their faces. It was rumored that the females of the Celestial Lake Palace were all extremely beautiful. Fairy Qingmei wouldn't accept anyone other than beauties, and it seemed like this rumor was true. Not only that, as long as one passed the test, they would have the qualifications to choose a beautiful female from the Celestial Lake Palace to be their Dao companion. Naturally, the prerequisite was that the other party had to agree to it. This caused the hearts of many to pound with excitement. Such a rule had never been broken for thousands of years. Nobody knew why Fairy Qingmei wanted to do this. Everyone, please enter the Celestial Lake Palace. The white-robed young lady led the way, as the crowd followed behind her. The Celestial Lake Palace was extremely beautiful. Following the long corridor in the middle, they arrived at a place filled with pavilions. These pavilions were located on both sides of the long corridor. Atop the pavilions, there were some who peeked their heads out, casting their gazes downwards. Cold expressions could be seen on the faces of many. These people must be the same as them, here to participate in the test. What a fool's dream. The Celestial Lake would be opened once a month, and each time, only 7 people would have the qualifications to bathe in the Celestial Lake. And during this month, there would be many people who would come to participate in the test. It wouldn't be so easy to pass the test. Qin Wenin contemplated the Celestial Lake Palace, feeling astonished in his heart. The power established by Fairy Qingmei was actually so beautiful, like a dream. At the end of the long corridor, there was a palace that was arranged in a picturesque manner. There was a flight of stairs leading up to it, and at the very top, there seemed to be a celestial palace erected there. Is Fairy Qingmei still here? Qin Wentian mused. He had already ascertained that this was the location marked by the Azure Emperor, but now he had no idea what he should do next. Did Fairy Qingmei know of the secret of the Azure Emperor? From what Yi Xiang had said, it was rumored that the Azure Emperor had abandoned Fairy Qingmei. However, Qin Wentian didn't believe it. There must be more to it than meets the eye. If not, why would the Azure Emperor leave behind the map on the 9th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion, and even order the sect leader of the Emperor Star Academy to protect it? Qin Wenin even had a bold conjecture that the greatest secret of the Azure Emperor wasn't kept in the Azure Emperor Palace. Instead, it was guarded by Fairy Qingmei. Naturally, this was because Qin Wentian had obtained the map from the Emperor Star Academy. Back then, when those old freaks saw the battle between the Azure Emperor and Fairy Qingmei, they definitely wouldn't have thought this way. Shiki, you half-human half-demonic fellow, how dare you come here? Are you not afraid that I, your father, will make you unable to become a human or a demon? A clear voice drifted over, causing Yi Xiang's heart to skip a beat. He didn't know who was so arrogant, daring to humiliate Shiki of the Beast King Hall. Inclining his head, Yi Xiang saw a young man clad in blue robes. This young man was around 18 years of age, with a squarish face and large eyes. He was currently laughing uproariously at Shiki. Ouyang Guangxing. Yi Xiang's countenance changed. The cultivation bases of those who came here wouldn't be too high. The youths of the 9 continents would all be at the 3rd level of Yuanfu or below, with the highest cultivation base being at the 9th level of arterial circulation. Borrowing the effects of the celestial pool, they would be able to break through to Yuanfu in one go. Not only that, the Yuanfu pools they opened up would be filled with even more astral energy. This Ouyang Guangxing was also at the 9th level of arterial circulation. For someone of his age, it wasn't something to be proud of. In the 9 continents, there were many 17-year-old Yuanfu cultivators who had already broken through to Yuanfu. But after all, the concept of cultivation was different. If you wanted to condense an astral soul of a higher grade, you had to first increase your perception and willpower. Hence, for the sake of a smoother path in the future, many people didn't mind delaying the time they condensed an astral soul, causing them to start cultivating very late. Ouyang Quangxing was one such example. He didn't care about the opinions of others. If he didn't start cultivating after the age of 16, many in the Ouyang aristocrat clan would look down on him. Yet Ouyang Quangxing shocked the entire Ouyang aristocrat clan by condensing an astral soul from the fourth heavenly layer in one go. This caused the Ouyang aristocrat clan to tremble, as they sighed in admiration at Ouyang Quangxing's tenacity. He was definitely a character worthy of being nurtured. And indeed, in the next 2 years, Ouyang Quangxing's cultivation soared by leaps and bounds, directly breaking through to the 9th level of arterial circulation. Although he was slower compared to others, the 2 astral souls he condensed were all from the 4th heavenly layer. Hence, his combat prowess was extremely tyrannical, and there were few who could be compared to him at the same level as him. Shiki was also an extremely tyrannical character. If it was any other cultivator at the 9th level of arterial circulation, he would have already started a massacre. But against Ouyang Quangxing, he didn't have any confidence. Ouyang Quangxing, remember your words. Shiki coldly spat. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Ouyang Quangxing laughed uproariously. Beside him, a companion appeared. It was a beautiful young lady, and upon seeing her, Yi Xiang couldn't help but be amazed. She had come as well, and not only that, she came together with Ouyang Quangxing. It seemed like this trip to the Celestial Lake Palace would be filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It was said that Yao Xing from the Sky Demon sect had also arrived in advance. Yao Xing was also an extremely difficult character to deal with. Thinking of this, Yi Xiang gradually lost his confidence, as he felt extremely depressed. Below the empty pavilions, there is an empty signboard. Everyone, please choose your lodgings first. There's still a few more days before we have the opportunity to visit the Celestial Lake, someone from the Celestial Lake Palace stated to the crowd. Momentarily, the crowd dispersed, choosing their own lodgings. Let's stay here, Qin Wentian said to Mo Qingqing, noticing that the lodgings beside them had an empty signboard hanging above them. I'll listen to you. Mo Qingqing nodded her head. After which, the 2 of them removed the empty signboard and entered the lodgings. Below the lodgings was a living room, while upstairs were 2 bedrooms. Walking to the balcony outside the bedrooms, Qin Wendian saw Yi Xiang and the rest entering the lodgings opposite, while Ouyang Quangxing stood beside them. Little brat, where did you come from? Ouyang Quangxing's gaze drifted over, and upon seeing Qin Wendian, he couldn't help but ask. Qin Wendian was 17 years of age, with a handsome countenance. His eyes were deep and reserved, and his entire person exuded a demonic aura, giving Ouyang Quangxing a feeling that he was extraordinary. I came from a very small country, you probably haven't heard of it before. Qin Wendian laughed. What about you? Ouyang Quangxing froze for a moment, before breaking into a grin. Yi Xiang introduced, Brother Qin, this is Ouyang Quangxing, an outstanding young man from the Ouyang aristocrat clan of the Azure continent. Yi Xiang nodded his head towards Ouyang Quangxing, expressing his goodwill. However, Qin Wendian had no idea what the Ouyang aristocrat clan was, nor did he know who Ouyang Quangxing was. The Azure continent, the Azure Emperor Palace is also located there, right? Qin Wendian murmured. Upon hearing his words, Ouyang Quangxing froze for a moment before laughing uproariously. What an interesting fellow. Although the Azure Emperor Palace was incomparably glorious in the past, it had gradually declined. How could it be mentioned in the same breath as the Ouyang aristocrat clan? Yi Xiang was speechless. Could it be that in Qin Wentian's eyes, the Ouyang aristocrat clan wasn't as important as the Azure Emperor Palace? Chapter 181. Yi Xiang stared at Qin Wendian as he stated, Brother Qin, although the Ouyang aristocrat clan and the Azure Emperor Palace are both located in the Azure continent, the 2 of them are not on the same level. The Ouyang aristocrat clan can be ranked amongst the top few in the 9 continents, and Brother Ouyang is one of the most outstanding geniuses of the younger generation in the Ouyang aristocrat clan. You have twin martial spirits and condensed an astral soul from the 4th heavenly layer. Qin Wentian's heart pounded as he glanced at Ouyang Quangxing. Twin martial spirits condensed from an astral soul from the fourth heavenly layer, this was definitely an extremely rare character. Seems like the 9 continents was indeed a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Stop sucking up to me. You're already so old and you haven't even broken through to Yuanfu yet. What's there to brag about? Ouyang Guangxing spoke in a heroic tone, as though he didn't care about it at all. Yi Xiang smiled shakily. There was a hint of flattery in his tone. Brother Qin, although you don't have much hope of obtaining the chance to bathe in the celestial pool, you can still broaden your horizons and broaden your horizons. Yi Xiang continued chatting with Qin Wenyan, boasting to show how knowledgeable he was. Seeing that Qin Wenyan was seriously listening, he felt even more complacent. After chatting for quite some time, Qin Wenyan returned to his room, his heart still filled with worries about the matters in Chu. Compared to these geniuses in the outside world, the geniuses of Chu were undoubtedly much more inferior. But now, he couldn't even settle the matters in Chu. Although the Azure Emperor had given him the map and he had found this place, he still had no idea where to go. He could only take things one step at a time. What are you thinking about? Mo Qingqing walked in. Upon seeing Mo Qingqing's strange appearance, Qin Wendian couldn't help but laugh, causing Mo Qingqing to glare at him. I'm thinking if your clan knew that I kidnapped you here, would they come looking for me? Qin Wendian gently spoke. In that case, you can take responsibility. Mo Qingqing laughed. Take responsibility? Qin Wendian's eyes flickered with a bright light as he stared at Mo Qingqing. This caused Mo Qingqing's face to instantly turn red. You bastard! After speaking, he slipped away with his tail between his legs, causing Qin Wendian to laugh in joy. For the next few days, there would be people arriving daily. Qin Wendian leaned on the balcony and gazed downwards, only to see 2 groups of silhouettes walking by. The person in the lead was a beautiful lady, and when Qin Wendian saw her, he froze for a moment before smiling and calling out, Qian Mingyu. Qian Mingyu inclined her head and stared at Qin Wendian, as an expression of bewilderment appeared on her face. After exiting the spirit beast testing grounds, she had already sent people to gather information about Qin Wendian. She knew that in the Chu country under the control of the 9 mystical palace, there was indeed a person named Qin Wendian. Why are you here as well? Qian Mingyu smiled. A place like Chu actually knew of the existence of the Celestial Lake Palace? Same as you. Qin Wendian laughed. Being able to meet Qian Wendian here could be considered fate. Hence, Qin Wendian no longer had the coldness he had when they were in the spirit beast domain. After all, Qian Wendian had helped him once, and in addition to the 9 swords of life, he believed that there was a possibility that Qian Wendian would have some sort of relationship with Qian Wendian. I'll be staying here. Qian Wendian pointed to a building beside Qin Wendian as she walked up to the 2nd level of the building. This time around, there are quite a number of people from my Green Cloud Pavilion. The test of the Celestial Lake Palace is extremely dangerous. Why don't you come with us? We can take care of each other. Qian Wendian said to Qin Wendian. In her heart, she wanted to help Qin Wendian. This fellow didn't have any backing, and if he came here alone, he would definitely be in danger. Since she had already met him, she might as well help him out. Okay. Qin Wendian nodded his head. He didn't think too much about it. He turned to Qian Wendian and asked, There's something I want to ask you. Is the 9 swords of life an innate technique unique to your Green Cloud Pavilion? You can say that. Qian Wendian nodded her head. This sword art has many variations, and it's filled with the intent of endlessness. I'm only proficient in the slightest bit of it, but back then, my aunt had already cultivated it to an extremely high level. She was even able to unleash the power of the divine inscriptions within the 9 swords of life, causing the might of the 9 swords to be even more powerful. Aunt! Qin Wendian's heart trembled. Could it be that this was the lover of Senior Gong Hong? Weren't those 4 divine inscription paintings carved by Gong Hong's lover? What's wrong? Do you also cultivate sword arts? Qian Wendian laughed. Nope, I'm just casually asking. Your aunt must be extremely powerful, right? Qin Wendian replied. And not only is my aunt beautiful, her talent is extremely high as well. There are countless suitors chasing after her, but my aunt is trapped by love. Qian Wendian sighed, but soon after, she froze. Why was she telling this to Qin Wenin? Seeing the gentle smile on Qin Wentian's face, Qian Wendian could only smile bitterly in her heart. She turned and left. Although this young man's talent wasn't bad, if he truly liked her, she would definitely not agree to his request. Since they had met here, there was no harm in helping him out. Qin Wendian didn't know what Qian Wendian was thinking about. He turned back, only to see Mo Qingqing quietly sitting there. I've met her once before. She might have some sort of connection with Senior Gong Hong. Qin Wendian spoke to Mo Qingqing. Mo Qingqing inclined her head and looked at him, as a light smile appeared on her face. It was extremely moving. Qin Wenin retrieved one of the 4 divine inscriptions Gong Hong had given him. It was none other than the 9 swords of life. After which, his heart trembled. This divine inscription was only a type of concept, but if it was an offensive divine inscription, it wouldn't be like this. Qin Wenin had once obtained the memories of divine inscriptions, and he knew that there were some extremely complicated third-ranked divine inscriptions. If he could use them to attack, wouldn't the might be extremely tyrannical? From Qin Wentian's understanding, divine inscriptions and innate techniques had some similarities. Qin Wentian's eyes gradually brightened, but he soon frowned. If he wanted to use third-ranked divine inscriptions to attack, although the might of the attack would be extremely powerful, it would require a huge amount of divine energy. Before he stepped into Yuanfu, he wouldn't be able to withstand such an attack. A gentle smile appeared on Mo Qingqing's face when she saw the serious expression on Qin Wentian's face. What was this fellow thinking about? Why was he so engrossed in his thoughts? For the fist attacks of the Astral River Hall, I've comprehended the great dream halberd art's fallen star stance. However, if I use my sword-type divine energy to attack... Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with sharpness. If he could use his sword-type divine energy, he wouldn't be invincible even if he was at Yuanfu. Inclining his head, Qin Wentian saw Mo Qingqing smiling at him. Her beautiful eyes contained traces of gentleness, causing Qin Wentian to feel warmth in his heart. Suddenly, an impulse welled up in his heart. What are you thinking about? Mo Qingqing still hadn't discovered the strange look on Qin Wentian's face. As the sound of her voice faded, Qin Wentian hugged her and planted a kiss on her flawless face, causing Mo Qingqing to feel as though she had been struck by lightning. Her beautiful eyes widened in shock. Qin Wentian stood up and slipped away. Only now did Mo Qingqing react. Her face instantly turned red, and as she stared at the fleeing Qin Wentian, she couldn't help but giggle. Her beauty was indescribable. Qin Wentian returned to his own room and didn't come out. Mo Qingqing would occasionally go to look for him, only to see him meditating with his eyes closed. At this moment, within Qin Wentian's body, the astral energy unceasingly converged, condensing into numerous sword-type divine energy swords that were incomparably sharp. The attacks of swords were extremely sharp, and if his body was filled with sword-type divine energy, his attacks would definitely rise to another level. However, this was somewhat extravagant. Luckily, he didn't lack Yuan meteor stones. Other than this, he would also create dreams for himself, and practice in his dreams, testing out the results of his cultivation. Today, the people from the Celestial Lake Palace came over, and extended an invitation to them. Everyone exited the pavilion and walked along the long corridor, heading towards the direction of the Celestial Lake Palace. So many people. Qin Wentian glanced at the silhouettes walking along the corridor. There were at least a few hundred of them. This is already considered a small number. The Grand Xia Empire is so vast, and the temptation of the Celestial Lake Palace to cultivators at the 9th level of arterial circulation is exceedingly great. Even those from major clans would come here. Firstly, to bathe in the Celestial Lake, and secondly, to temper themselves, Qian Mingyu explained in a low voice. Everyone can come? The Celestial Lake Palace doesn't reject anyone? Qin Wentian curiously asked. Yes, this was a promise made by Fairy Qingmei back then. There's no need for her to obstruct those who come. However, those who are too weak wouldn't dare to come. They wouldn't even know how they died, Qian Mingyu explained. Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing both nodded their heads. At this moment, Emo Qingqing had dressed herself up again. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, not only did she disguise herself as a male, she even smeared some unknown makeup on her face, making her look even more grotesque. However, she managed to conceal her breathtaking beauty well. The female beside Ouyang Guangxing, as well as Qian Mingyu, were also extremely beautiful. Although they couldn't be compared to Emo Qingqing, they could still be considered rare beauties. However, there was no need for them to conceal their beauty, because they weren't afraid of trouble. The people from the Celestial Lake Palace led the crowd to a great hall. This great hall was extremely beautiful, and the ceiling of the great hall was like a starry sky, with numerous gigantic stone pillars erected at the top. The female cultivators in this great hall were all rare beauties. The crowd gathered in the great hall, and in front of them, there was an astral lake. This lake was extremely beautiful, as though it was reflecting the light of the stars. So this is the entrance to the Celestial Lake? What a mystical place indeed. I wonder how much astral energy is contained within a real celestial lake. Many people exclaimed in their hearts. At the front of the great hall, a beautiful middle-aged woman sat on an astral throne, smiling at the crowd. We pay our respects to the palace mistress. The crowd bowed in unison, showing their respect. The gazes of many turned to the female cultivator beside the beautiful middle-aged woman, their eyes filled with unmasked admiration. She was too beautiful, out of this world, without a trace of mortal air. Just by standing there, she caused people to feel ashamed of their inferiority. Many of the female cultivators in the crowd felt that they had lost their luster. Emo Qingqing's eyes flickered as she exclaimed, "How beautiful! I've finally found a woman who can be compared to you." Qin Wendian whispered in Emo Qingqing's ears, causing Emo Qingqing to roll her eyes. But she looked so cold. Qin Wendian lightly nodded his head. That female cultivator stood there, giving off a feeling of coldness, as though it was difficult to get close to her. Chapter 182. It was impossible to tell the age of the palace lord. It was rumored that he was the successor of Fairy Qingmei, but no one knew if the rumors were true or false. After Fairy Qingmei lived in seclusion, she established the Celestial Lake Palace and accepted female disciples, passing down her legacy generation after generation. However, it was extremely rare for outsiders to catch a glimpse of her. The palace lord of the Celestial Lake Palace smiled at the crowd and nodded her head. If you want to enter the Celestial Lake, you should all understand the dangers involved. I wonder which powers are the elites from? Everyone understood that this wasn't a question for everyone. He just wanted to see which overlord-level experts had come. Junior is Ouyang Guangxing from the Ouyang clan of the Azure Continent. The clan lord wishes for me to send his regards to Fairy Qingmei. Ouyang Guangxing took a step forward, and the beautiful maiden beside him also spoke. Jiang Ting from the Jiang clan of the Wind Continent pays her respects to the palace lord. Ouyang Guangxing was forthright, but the maiden had a hint of arrogance in her. That was her natural demeanor. It wasn't because she wanted to disrespect the palace lord. Descendants of the Ouyang aristocrat clan and Jiang clan, please take a seat. The palace lord smiled as he nodded. Ouyang Guangxing and Jiang Ting didn't stand on ceremony. Behind them, there were a few others from their respective clans. Ouyang Guangxing is actually together with Jiang Ting. The eyes of many flickered with astonishment. The Ouyang aristocrat clan and Jiang clan were both transcendent powers in the 9 continents. Beast King Hall Shiki. Shiki indifferently stated as he took a step forward. The hearts of the spectators all understood that these transcendent powers were indeed a tier higher than others. Please take a seat. The palace lord smiled. Wang Xiao from the Wang clan of the War Continent. Another white-robed young man stepped forward, causing the crowd to be startled. Even the Wang clan had come. It seemed like the younger generations of the transcendent powers treated the Celestial Lake Palace as a training ground for them. If they were to release their cultivation bases, they would definitely discover that their cultivation bases were all at the peak of arterial circulation. As for the others beside them, they could be at the peak of arterial circulation or yuanfu. After all, the statuses of each transcendent power were different. Mu Baifei from the Swallow Continent. This person wore a long white robe, and he seemed especially clean and delicate. However, there was a hint of sharpness between his brows. A swordsman from the Yen province. He must be a swordsman from the Yen province. Sky Demon Sect, Yao Sheng. Green Cloud Pavilion, Qian Mingyu. Several people stepped forward, and the palace lord allowed them to be seated. The crowd scrutinized those who were seated and couldn't help but to silently memorize their faces. Especially those who were seated, there was a high possibility that they would become the most dazzling characters of the 9 continents in the future. Ouyang Guangxing was one of them. Qin Wenyin, come here too. After Qian Mingyu sat down, she called out to Qin Wenyin, as the members of the Green Cloud Pavilion stood behind her. Qin Wenyin froze for a moment, before lightly nodding his head as he walked to the back of Qian Mingyu. Since Qian Mingyu had spoken, it wouldn't be good for him to reject her request. Are these 2 from the Azure continent as well? The palace lord smiled as he looked at Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing, as though he was extremely polite to everyone. They are my friends from a place called the Chu country, Qin Wenyin said. Qian Mingyu replied with a smile, causing a bright light to flash in the eyes of the palace lord, as she cast a deep glance at Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing. However, very quickly, the palace lord shifted her gaze away, as she smiled at the crowd. Only 7 people can bathe within the celestial lake. I'm sure all of you are clear of the dangers within, so I won't say anything more. I only hope that all of you will show mercy when you fight. You only have a month's time. The crowd nodded their heads. They naturally understood the rules. Let's go in, we won't waste your time. Don't bring demonic beasts in. The palace lord laughed, causing the hearts of the crowd to be filled with excitement as they walked towards the entrance of the celestial lake. Let's go. Qian Mingyu stood up and walked down the stairs leading to the celestial lake. Qin Wenyin discovered that the water wasn't actually lake water, as it wouldn't wet his robes at all. What a mystical place. Qin Wenyin had an expression of amazement on his face, as he and Mo Qingqing stepped in together. Instantly, Qin Wenyin felt a mysterious force acting on his body. My Yuanfu. The expression in Mo Qingqing's eyes changed. As she stepped into the celestial lake, she discovered that the connection between her Yuanfu and her meridians had been severed. At this moment, they had already stepped into the celestial lake. Qin Wenyin and the rest discovered that the stairs were still there, but they were now in a different space, filled with mystical starlight. In front of them, there was only one ancient pathway. Qian Mingyu glanced at Mo Qingqing in bewilderment as she asked, "You guys don't know about the refinement grounds of the celestial lake?" "Not really." Qin Wenyin shook his head. "Don't be ridiculous." Qian Mingyu couldn't help but berate. "If you don't know, why did you guys come all the way here? The refinement grounds of the celestial lake and the spirit beast's refinement grounds are both part of the 18 training grounds of the Grand Xia Empire. Here, there's a mysterious force that seals one's Yuanfu. Those at the Yuanfu realm would be the same as those at the peak of the arterial circulation realm. If not, wouldn't those at the arterial circulation realm be courting death? Of course, even if their Yuanfu is sealed, those at the Yuanfu realm who have cultivated powerful innate techniques would still have an advantage. However, the innate techniques they cultivate would also have a high consumption rate of yuan energy. And in this place, if you deplete the yuan energy in your body without any way to replenish it, wouldn't you be courting death? Qin Wentian's gaze froze. If one's Yuanfu was sealed, and their connection with their body was severed, they wouldn't even be able to fly freely. In the refinement grounds of the celestial lake, the advantage of a Yuanfu realm cultivator would be reduced to the minimum. It's said that the refinement grounds of the celestial lake are naturally formed, and in addition to the interference of the celestial lake palace, there's an additional layer of danger. It won't be so easy to fight for the celestial lake. You are really too ridiculous. Qian Mingyu coldly spoke. Although her tone wasn't very good, it had something to do with her identity and she was truly doing this for his own good. Qin Wenyin naturally wouldn't mind it too much. He casually smiled and replied, "We will just follow you. Where is the celestial pond?" At the end of the refinement grounds of the celestial lake is the location of the celestial lake. Qian Mingyu gazed at the ancient pathway. Qin Wendian discovered that the others had already started on their way, rushing ahead. Evidently, they were in a rush. Mingyu, why are you talking so much to him? Let's hurry. A beautiful lady beside her frowned as she stared at Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing. She was somewhat unhappy, not knowing what Qian Mingyu was thinking. Let's go. Qian Mingyu coldly spoke. After which, the group of them sprinted ahead at an extremely fast speed. Qin Wendian turned his gaze ahead. He discovered that the people on the ancient pathway had all distanced themselves from each other and were extremely cautious. This was especially so for those from the other transcendent powers. In fact, there were even some who had formed alliances. This subtle situation caused Qin Wendian's heart to be as clear as snow. There were only 7 slots for the celestial lake, and it seemed that the most dangerous aspect of the refinement grounds was the human heart. But even so, there were still so many people who came here to temper themselves. Most probably, these people all had a certain level of confidence in their own strength. Forest of Illusions, be careful. This place will trap us for a period of time. Qian Mingyu stared at the forest in front of them, only to see the crowd of cultivators rushing into it, disappearing in an instant. Follow closely. Qian Mingyu's countenance turned heavy. They also stepped into the Forest of Illusions, and as they did so, many ancient trees appeared, resembling a maze. Qian Mingyu waved her hands, and the group of them began to slow down their pace, shuttling through the Forest of Illusions. However, they soon discovered that they couldn't get out, and they couldn't even find the others. Indeed, it's the same as the rumors. Qian Mingyu continued. In the refinement grounds of the celestial lake, it's the survival of the fittest. There's no such thing as luck. What should we do now? Someone asked Qian Mingyu. Let's rest here, Qian Mingyu replied. She actually stopped and sat down on the grass. The quiet psychedelic forest was filled with a suffocating oppressive energy, giving people a gloomy feeling. Rustling sounds rang out, and Qian Mingyu's body stiffened as she surveyed her surroundings with vigilance. Very swiftly, a group of silhouettes gradually appeared in her line of sight. These were the people from the Beast King Hall, with Shiki in the lead. Shiki had once dashed alone in the Demon Mountain City, but evidently, he wasn't alone. These transcendent powers weren't so stupid as to enter the refinement grounds of the Celestial Lake alone. Shiki's steps were extremely slow, and the eyes that stared at Qian Mingyu flickered with greed, the greed of a beast. Qian Mingyu furrowed her brows as she coldly stated, Shiki, does the Beast King Hall really want to clash with the Green Cloud Pavilion? This isn't a good idea. Is that so? A sinister smile appeared on Shiki's face. After which, Qian Mingyu abruptly shifted her gaze, only to see another group of silhouettes appearing. Yao Sheng from the Celestial Palace. Qian Mingyu froze as her countenance turned incredibly unsightly. The Beast King Hall and the Celestial Palace were both transcendent powers in the Demon Continent, yet they had actually joined forces. You can only blame your Green Cloud Pavilion for being unlucky, Yao Sheng sinisterly stated, as he swept a glance at Qin Wenyin. He naturally still remembered Qin Wenyin, who had once entered the refinement grounds of the spirit beasts. Qian Mingyu spoke in a low voice, causing the hearts of the crowd to tremble. Qian Mingyu was extremely decisive. She knew that she was unlucky and didn't want to clash head-on. You guys, capture her alive. Shiki pointed to Mo Qingqing, who was standing beside Qin Wendian, as he greedily advanced towards Qian Mingyu. Flee! Qian Mingyu shouted, and instantly, the members of the Green Cloud Pavilion fled in different directions. Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing also sprinted towards a certain direction. Shiki abruptly stomped on the ground as he soared up into the air. With a howl of rage, a terrifying sound wave blasted outwards as the shadow of a berserk lion appeared in the air. When Shiki's body landed on the ground, he instantly blasted out a punch containing a terrifying amount of energy. That person was stunned by the sound wave, and by the time he regained his senses, the fist had already smashed into his head, causing it to explode. The members of the Beast King Hall and Sky Demon sect moved at the same time, cleansing the members of the Green Cloud Pavilion. Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing sprinted towards a certain direction, only to see the members of the Beast King Hall chasing after them at an incredible speed. An ancient halberd appeared in Qin Wentian's hands as a terrifying cold light flickered in his eyes. Wenyan, try not to exhaust as much energy as possible. The refinement grounds of the Celestial Lake is still very long. Mo Qingqing advised, causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble as he nodded his head. Right now, it was true that he couldn't overexert himself. The path ahead was still very long, and this was only the beginning. Chapter 183. Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing's speed was exceedingly fast. There were a total of 5 people chasing after them, and very soon, they were far away from the place where Qin Wenyan was resting. Not only that, Qin Wentian's footsteps didn't stop as he continued sprinting forward. This caused the gazes of the pursuers to turn exceptionally cold. The speed of the two in front of them wasn't inferior to theirs, and if they were to get too far away from the group, they might encounter experts from other transcendent powers. People from the Beast King Hall? At this moment, a silhouette appeared in front of them. Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing halted their steps. It was none other than Ouyang Guangxing. Ouyang Guangxing, this matter has nothing to do with you. The 5 experts from the Beast King Hall surrounded Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing. Only after scanning the surroundings and confirming that there was no one else from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, did they feel relieved. However, this Ouyang Guangxing was truly arrogant enough. He actually left the group alone. Ouyang Guangxing laughed, crossing his arms in front of his chest, as though he was waiting to watch a good show. The eyes of the leader of the Beast King Hall gleamed with a demonic coldness. He glanced at Ouyang Guangxing before speaking to the other 4, "Kill the males." The robes of the 4 fluttered in the wind as demonic qi gushed forth from their bodies. 2 of them walked towards Qin Wenyan, while the other 2 walked towards Mo Qingqing. Qin Wenyan raised his ancient halberd horizontally, as a demonic light flashed in his eyes, so cold that it could pierce into the bones. The youth from earlier instantly turned devilishly handsome, as his robes fluttered in the wind, exuding an intense killing intent. The 2 walking towards Qin Wenyan simultaneously acted. One of them had a palm as sharp as an eagle's claw, smashing out towards Qin Wenyan. The shadow of the eagle's claw appeared in the air as a terrifying demonic wind gushed forth, wanting to tear Qin Wenyan into pieces. The other one blasted out a tyrannical gigantic palm, akin to the palm of a gigantic beast. In their eyes, Qin Wenyan was already a dead man. Buzz! A raging wind swept out. Qin Wentian's ancient halberd exploded forth, directly pouncing towards the incoming eagle claw. His speed was as fast as lightning, and the terrifying strength caused the raging wind to howl, as well as a terrifyingly sharp sword qi. A piercing sound rang out. The ancient halberd directly broke apart the sharp claws of the falling mountain palms, penetrating through the hands of his opponent and piercing into his brain. At the same time, Qin Wenyan lifted his left hand as he executed the falling mountain palms. With a thunderous boom, the gigantic palms of his opponent collided with the falling mountain palms, causing a raging wind to billow out. However, when Qin Wenyan saw the coldness in Qin Wentian's eyes, he couldn't help but feel a sense of fear. Qin Wenyan retreated slightly as his ancient halberd swept out horizontally, resembling the feathers of a vermilion bird. That person could feel the terrifying sharpness of the halberd as he roared in rage. Both his palms simultaneously blasted out, yet Qin Wenyan opened his mouth and spat out a beam of sword light. The sharpness of the sword slashed through the head of that person, killing him instantly. In terms of combat, there were very few cultivators at the 9th level of the arterial circulation realm who could contend against Qin Wenyan. After killing the 2 of them, Qin Wenyan glanced at the silhouette in front of him. Abruptly, he turned around, but he didn't lunge towards his opponent. Instead, he dashed towards Mo Qingqing. An indomitable force gushed forth as demonic qi ravaged the area. Very quickly, the ancient halberd was embedded into the head of that person. Abruptly, a terrifying surge of demonic qi erupted forth. That person, who had been motionless all this while, released 3 beast-type astral souls. Resplendent astral light flashed as he advanced towards Qin Wendian, his demonic chi towering to the heavens. Roar! A demonic roar rang out, causing Qin Wendian's eardrums to tremble. After which, it was as though he could see a myriad of beasts rushing towards him, wanting to devour him whole. A Yuanfu cultivator. Qin Wendian's heart trembled. Not only that, this person was an extremely powerful Yuanfu cultivator, wanting to kill him in a single strike. His opponent also knew that his Yuanfu was sealed, and using such a powerful innate technique would consume a great deal of energy. Hence, he decided to kill Qin Wendian in a single strike, saving him from further exhaustion. He also noticed that Mo Qingqing was also a Yuanfu cultivator. Qin Wendian felt his eardrums about to explode. The myriad of beasts rushing towards him caused him to feel a terrifying pressure. A raging wind swept through the air, and Qin Wendian's blood seemed to be on fire. The demonic qi emanating from him grew stronger and stronger. After which, he lightly took a step forward, and this step caused his entire person to transform into a blur. Executing the meteor stance, a terrifying beam of light pierced through everything, rushing towards that terrifying attack. Boom, boom, boom. The powerful force was akin to a hurricane, lacerating Qin Wendian's body. However, his physique was that of a demonic beast. His afterimage continued advancing forward, and the ancient halberd wouldn't retreat. Rumble! The terrifying force caused Qin Wendian's body to be flung through the air, smashing through 2 large trees. He groaned in agony as he coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood. The demonic qi in front of him continued to wreak havoc, yet the body of the Yuanfu cultivator didn't move. The ancient halberd was still embedded in his throat, and his eyes were wide open. Evidently, he hadn't expected that his opponent would be able to pierce the ancient halberd into his throat at the critical moment. Mo Qingqing had also dealt with her opponent. She walked to the side of Qin Wendian, retrieved a medicinal pill, and fed it to Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian swallowed the pill, and looking at the nervous Mo Qingqing, a smile appeared on his face as he replied, "I'm fine." Although he was smiling, Qin Wendian didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless in his heart. He knew that this refinement grounds wouldn't be easy. Awesome! Ouyang Guangxing cast a deep glance at Qin Wendian. That strike earlier was extremely beautiful, and he knew that if he were to kill his opponent, although he wouldn't be injured, the amount of astral energy he would have to expend would be much more than what Qin Wendian had. However, the refinement grounds was a race of life and death. Even if he suffered some injuries, he wouldn't want to expend too much astral energy. Qin Wendian naturally understood this logic. Hence, even if he was injured, he still wanted to kill his opponent. Not only that, Qin Wendian knew that Mo Qingqing had some healing pills on her. Nodding his head to Ouyang Guangxing, Qin Wendian didn't say anything else. "If we were outside, I would definitely look for you to test it out." Ha! Ouyang Guangxing laughed as he departed. Evidently, he was going to look for his own team. In here, although Ouyang Guangxing was very confident in his own strength, he knew that if he chose to act alone at the start of the refinement grounds, it would definitely be fatal. The later stages of the refinement grounds didn't matter, because only 7 people could obtain the Celestial Lake. Hence, in this dangerous refinement grounds, there would always be people dying. Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing left the area. After all, there were still corpses lying around, so they chose a different location to rest and recuperate. Qin Wendian gave Mo Qingqing a few Yuan meteor stones. In here, they could only rely on the energy of the Yuan meteor stones to recover some of their strength. A rustling sound rang out, causing Qin Wendian's heart to tighten as he turned his head to look behind him. "Brother Qin, so it's you." Yi Xiang appeared, smiling as he walked over. Qin Wendian discovered that Yi Xiang had quite a number of people with him, and it seemed as though they had formed an alliance. The person in the lead was a handsome young man clad in white, with an ancient sword strapped to his back. He was none other than the swallow swordsman, Mu Baifei, who was bestowed a seat by the palace mistress of the Celestial Lake Palace. "Brother Qin, weren't you together with those from the Green Cloud Pavilion? How did you get injured?" Yi Xiang glanced at Mo Qingqing, before turning to Qin Wendian. Although Yi Xiang's personality was extremely cordial, Qin Wenyan was still wary of him. Nodding his head, he replied, "I met with an ambush and was slightly injured. Without the Green Cloud Pavilion, I'm afraid that Brother Qin and Mo Qingqing would be in even more danger. How about this? I'll help you too, and plead for you two to join our alliance." Yi Xiang spoke to Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan pondered for a moment, glancing at Mo Qingqing, before eventually nodding his head. Even if he had to sacrifice himself, he had to ensure Mo Qingqing's safety. If the two of them were to act alone, it would indeed be extremely dangerous. "Don't worry, it's rare for us to meet by fate. Leave it to me," Yi Xiang heroically stated, after which he ran over to Mu Baifei's side to discuss some matters. After which, he waved his hands towards Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing. Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing walked over to the group of cultivators. There were a total of 18 cultivators in this alliance, and it was a formidable lineup. However, Qin Wenyan was clear that this was only the beginning of the refinement grounds. Although they could form strong alliances to ensure their safety, at the end of the refinement grounds, the alliance would definitely crumble apart. Mu Baifei's group consisted of 3 swallow swordsmen, and all of them carried ancient swords on their backs. They were extremely arrogant and didn't even glance at Qin Wenyan. In fact, Mu Baifei didn't even care about these allies of his. It was only a temporary measure, and the others were clear about this point as well. However, they still had this little bit of forbearance. Not to mention, the swallow swordsmen were already extremely famous, so it didn't matter much to them. With such a strong lineup, they didn't meet with any trouble along the way. Occasionally, they would see a few corpses along the way. Finally, after 2 days, they exited the forest. However, what appeared in front of them was an ancient mountain path. Towering mountain peaks stood in front of them, and there were many ancient paths that they could tread on. "Who's going to scout ahead?" one of the swallow swordsmen beside Mu Baifei asked, his tone cold and aloof. "Brother Qin, I'll have to trouble you." Yi Xiang smiled as he looked at Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan narrowed his eyes as he stared at Yi Xiang. However, it only lasted for an instant before his expression returned to normal. "Don't worry, Brother Qin. The two of them will accompany you. If there's an ambush, we'll rush over immediately." Yi Xiang pointed to the other two, causing them to frown. Qin Wenyan nodded. "I'll go with you." Mo Qingqing stepped forward and pulled Qin Wenyan's hand. "It's fine if there's no need for so many people." Yi Xiang laughed. Qin Wenyan turned his head back and glanced at him. After which, he held Mo Qingqing's hand and continued forward, ignoring the people behind them. He didn't want to stay in this alliance any longer. Yi Xiang narrowed his eyes as a cold glint of light flickered in his pupils. "Yi Xiang, what are you thinking in your head?" Yi Xiang's companion unhappily asked. She had seen Mo Qingqing's countenance before, and yet Yi Xiang wanted Qin Wenyan to scout ahead, while hoping that Mo Qingqing would stay behind. It was hard not to have wild thoughts. In the Celestial Lake Palace, on a jade throne sat an extremely beautiful and seductive lady. However, when she opened her eyes, there was a hint of coldness in them, akin to that of a queen. Her beautiful eyes stared at the curtains in front of her. The scenes displayed on the curtains were actually scenes of the refinement grounds. Beside the cold queen stood 2 people. One was the palace mistress of the Celestial Lake Palace, and the other was the otherworldly beauty. Her demeanor was somewhat similar to that of the lady seated on the jade throne. At this moment, the eyes of the cold queen were fixed on Qin Wenyan. This young man was rumored to be from the Chu country. Chu. Back then when the Azure Emperor disappeared, the Azure Emperor Palace was in a precarious situation. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the Azure Emperor Palace, and everyone was closely monitored. However, no one found what they wanted. Only recently did some news leak out. Before the Azure Emperor died, he actually went to a place named Chu. At this moment, the cold queen's lips curled into a cold smile. Those arrogant fellows, did they really think that they could find the thing left behind by the Azure Emperor? Even if they found the painting, what use would it be? There was also her, guarding this place, guarding the last checkpoint. Will a new emperor appear in the Azure Emperor Palace? The cold queen murmured, causing the palace mistress to tremble slightly. However, the countenance of the absolute beauty didn't change in the slightest, as though she would always be like this. Chapter 184. Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing walked on the ancient path, only to discover that this path was extremely smooth and they didn't meet with any danger. After walking for a long time, they discovered that the ancient paths gradually converged into a single path. As they continued forward, there were several people standing there, staring ahead. Ouyang Guangxing, no wonder this path is so smooth. Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing stopped at the point where the ancient paths converged. If they continued forward, they would see another ancient path. However, at the bottom of the ancient path, there were several corpses that had died miserably. Their bodies were covered in blood, dyeing the ancient path red. Boom! Qin Wenyan felt the blood in his body throbbing as his heart pounded. Lifting his head, he saw a stone tablet 10 meters above the ancient path, with the words Yellow Springs engraved on it. How marvelous! Mo Qingqing similarly felt her blood pounding, causing her heart to tremble. The Yellow Springs ancient path actually appeared in this trial. It's rumored that as long as one encountered the Yellow Springs ancient path during the refinement grounds, they would have to turn back and find another path. The countenances of those present were extremely unsightly to behold. The ancient paths finally converged here, which meant that all the participants of the refinement grounds would arrive at this place. If one didn't dare to pass, they would have to turn back and turn back. But if one chose to pass the Yellow Springs ancient path, it would be a shortcut. I don't believe that the Yellow Springs ancient path is so evil. One of the participants spoke in an unconvinced tone, after which he took a step forward, albeit cautiously. Boom! The blood in his body throbbed as he felt his blood boiling. Taking another step forward, the blood vessels in that person's body became visible as his countenance turned ashen. Releasing his astral souls, his body was enveloped by astral light as he continued forward. Boom! The blood in his body throbbed unceasingly as his heart pounded madly. His face turned blood red as terror could be seen on his countenance. The thumping sounds continued unceasingly as his heartbeat grew faster and faster. Retreat! A thought appeared in his mind as he retreated. However, the blood in his body throbbed more and more violently, and finally, a scream of agony rang out. Those behind only saw his blood vessels rupturing as fresh blood splattered onto the ground. His entire body was a mangled mess. Let's turn back. Jiang Ting, who was standing beside Ouyang Guangxing, spoke. I pass by the Yellow Springs. If I can cross it, I will definitely enter the Celestial Pond. I want to give it a try. Only to see Ouyang Guangxing exuding a heroic aura as he stepped forward. Jiang Ting's countenance changed. Guangxing, don't be impulsive. Jiang Ting, you guys change paths. Don't worry about me. Ouyang Guangxing laughed uproariously as he advanced forwards. The blood in his body was similarly boiling as his heart pounded. Ouyang Guangxing's bloodline limit surged as he advanced. His footsteps were incomparably resolute, and his entire person exuded an aura of indomitable will. What was the difference between the road and the Yellow Springs? Once they stepped on it, they would never return. Either they stepped on it, or they died on the road to the Yellow Springs. Those from the Ouyang aristocrat clan and Jiang clan were all extremely nervous as they stared at their young master. Ouyang Guangxing's weakness was that he was too arrogant and had no scruples. As long as he set his mind on something, nobody would be able to stop him. Even if it was the Yellow Springs path, he would still walk it. Between the road and the Yellow Springs, turning back to see the shore is still there, but he refused to turn back. If I die, you better find a good family. Ouyang Guangxing had already arrived at the foot of the Yellow Springs monument. His countenance didn't change, and his long hair fluttered in the wind. Jiang Ting's heart pounded in tandem with Ouyang Guangxing's actions. Ouyang Guangxing released his astral souls as he halted his steps. Jiang Ting's heart leapt up to her throat, yet Ouyang Guangxing continued advancing, as though it was extremely difficult for him to do so. Gradually, Ouyang Guangxing moved further and further away from the Yellow Springs monument. Finally, he turned and smiled at Jiang Ting and the rest. Go on. Jiang Ting and the rest nodded their heads heavily as they turned and returned to the ancient pathway. What should we do? Mo Qingqing inclined her head and stared at Qin Wenyin. I want to give it a try. Qin Wenyin stared at Mo Qingqing, causing her to freeze for a moment. However, a smile soon appeared on her face as she replied, I'll accompany you then. No, wait for me here. If I can't make it, I'll come back. Qin Wenyin pinched Mo Qingqing's nose as he smiled, not wanting her to worry too much. Mo Qingqing nodded her head. After which, she saw Qin Wenyin turning and walking towards the Yellow Springs monument. His heartbeat quickened as the power of his bloodline began to surge. The reason why Qin Wenyin wanted to give it a try was because he could feel his bloodline throbbing under the Yellow Springs monument. Such a feeling made him yearn for it. Qin Wentian's heart pounded madly, but he didn't notice that behind him, Mo Qingqing had already taken a few steps forward. Qin Wenyin faintly felt that he was about to lose control of the power of his bloodline. His long hair turned black as it fluttered in the wind. The blood in his veins seemed to be seething with power, seething with rage and rage. Finally, he arrived at the foot of the Yellow Springs monument. Stopping, he closed his eyes as he sensed the power of his bloodline. It was as though there were blood-colored runes dancing about within his body. These blood-colored runes contained a terrifying amount of energy and exuded an aura of a king. Is this the materialization of the power of my bloodline? Qin Wentian's heart trembled. He could actually sense the power of his bloodline. He had a feeling that in the future he would be able to control this power to his heart's desire and infuse it into his attacks. This was like an advancement of his bloodline. Inclining his head, Qin Wentian's eyes were as red as blood, filled with a tyrannical aura. His bloodline was the true bloodline of a king. How could it be affected by the Yellow Springs monument? The blood-colored runes shot up into the air, shooting towards the Yellow Springs monument. In that instant, boundless blood-colored light radiated from the monument, gushing towards Qin Wenyin, as though they were clashing against each other. This scene caused Mo Qingqing's countenance to turn as pale as paper. Her heart was burning with anxiety. She bit her lips, causing fresh blood to seep out. She took a step forward, her heart pounding as her blood surged. At this moment, Qin Wenyin had no idea what Mo Qingqing was doing. He could only see the blood-colored runes in his body rushing towards the monument. Gradually, the monument quieted down. Mo Qingqing could feel that the power of the monument was getting weaker and weaker. She inclined her head and glanced at the monument, only to see it descending downwards, landing in front of Qin Wenyin. There was no longer any tyrannical power within it. He's actually able to control the monument. An expression of astonishment appeared on Qin Wentian's face. He could feel a mysterious connection being established between him and the monument. After which, with an intention of his will, he stored the monument into his interspatial ring. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flickered. This, Ouyang Guangxing turned his head and stared at the scene. He was also dumbfounded. Qin Wenyin had actually subdued the Yellow Springs monument? Qin Wenyin calmed the power of his bloodline as he turned and walked towards Mo Qingqing's side. Upon seeing the traces of blood on her lips, he couldn't help but feel moved in his heart. Silly lass. Qin Wenyin cupped Mo Qingqing's cheeks in his hands. However, Mo Qingqing merely smiled and said, "Let's go." Qin Wenyin nodded his head. The sound of footsteps drifted over as a group of people walked out from a nearby pathway. Upon seeing Qin Wenyin and Qian Mingyu, they were both stunned. "Are you all right?" Qian Mingyu stared at Qin Wenyin in bewilderment. She had initially thought that Qin Wenyin would be the one to suffer from the ambush. "My luck isn't bad." Qin Wenyin laughed. "Let's go together." Staring at the three people behind Qian Mingyu, Qin Wenyin sighed in his heart. It seemed like their group had suffered heavy casualties. Only 4 people remained. "Okay." Qian Mingyu nodded her head as the group continued on their way. Glancing at the corpses on the ground as well as Ouyang Guangxing standing in front of them, they assumed that this was the work of Ouyang Guangxing. Ouyang Guangxing bitterly smiled. When encountering the Yellow Springs, one could always turn back to the shore. For those who passed the Yellow Springs pathway, they would definitely be able to enter the Celestial Lake. But this time around, the barrier was broken. That freak had directly cleared the pathway, and this barrier wouldn't affect the rest of the people behind. In this case, the Yellow Springs pathway, which should have been able to obstruct many people, was now completely unknown. Turning, Ouyang Guangxing continued on his way, hoping that he would be the first to reach the Celestial Lake. Qin Wenyin and the rest also quickened their pace, following behind Ouyang Guangxing. A few moments later, they had already exited the pathway. Those from the Green Cloud Pavilion pulled Qian Mingyu along, lagging behind Ouyang Guangxing and Qin Wenyin. This caused Qian Mingyu's countenance to stiffen, as she understood their intentions. Most probably, they were worried that Ouyang Guangxing would kill them. After Ouyang Guangxing and Qin Wenyin exited the pathway, they saw that there were two ancient trees on both sides of the pathway. Astral light could be seen circulating on the branches of the ancient trees, and there were actually fruits on the branches. As expected of a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Ouyang Guangxing instantly dashed towards one of the ancient trees, leaping onto it as he rapidly plucked the fruits. Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing exchanged glances, before sprinting towards the other ancient tree and started plucking the fruits. Their speed was extremely fast, and by the time Qian Mingyu and the rest arrived, they had already harvested half of the fruits. Stellar fruits. Those from the Nebula Pavilion were startled, as they instantly rushed towards the ancient tree. What's the use of this stellar fruit? Qin Wenyin asked Qian Mingyu. The stellar fruit is a fruit that can only be found in a specific space. It can rapidly replenish one's astral energy, and is considered a treasure in this refinement grounds. Ouyang Guangxing had already finished plucking the fruits from the ancient tree, as he involuntarily explained to Qin Wenyin. Qin Wentian's eyes brightened as he stared at those from the Nebula Pavilion. There are quite a few fruits on this ancient tree, let's split them evenly according to the number of people. Why should we split them evenly? The female cultivator beside Qian Mingyu stared at Qin Wentian, as a sharp glint of light flickered in her eyes. Qin Wentian's eyes froze as he stared at the other party. What do you mean? By allowing you to follow us, we are already taking care of you. Naturally, we will be the ones to decide how to split the fruits. That female cultivator coldly replied, as she stared at Qin Wenyin with disdain. This fellow was truly indulging in the wildest fantasies, actually wanting to split the fruits equally. In her heart, Qin Wenyin following them was already a form of grace from the Green Cloud Pavilion towards Qin Wenyin. Back then, if it wasn't for them blocking the alliance of the Beast King Hall and Celestial Palace, how could Qin Wenyin still be alive? You mean to say that you don't intend to split the fruits equally? Qin Wentian's voice grew colder. He was the first to obtain the stellar fruits, and he had suggested to split them equally. Yet not only did the other party not appreciate his kindness, they even felt that he was being greedy. Ouyang Guangxing was also stunned, as an expression of interest appeared on his face. They wanted to take care of Qin Wenyin? Forming an alliance was originally beneficial to both parties, and if they were to encounter danger, they would share the burden together. But from the other party's words, it seemed like they were taking care of Qin Wenyin and the rest out of charity. Brother Qin, if you want to split the fruits, you should split them equally with us. At this moment, another group of silhouettes appeared on the ancient pathway. They were none other than Mu Baifei and the rest, and the one who spoke was none other than Yi Xiang. His eyes narrowed. The importance of the stellar fruits in the refinement grounds was self-evident. Qin Wenyin cast a glance at Yi Xiang and the rest. Indeed, these people weren't the kindest of people. Chapter 185. Qin Wenyin knew that the matter regarding the stellar fruits wouldn't end peacefully. His gaze landed on Qian Mingyu. He wasn't that familiar with the Green Cloud Pavilion, he only knew of Qian Mingyu. What do you think? Qin Wenyin asked. Miss Mingyu, this man has been under our care. By right, we should be the ones to distribute the stellar fruits. Not only that. As she spoke, she cast a glance at Mu Baifei and the rest. These people were like tigers eyeing their prey. With the stellar fruits, it would undoubtedly make up for their disadvantage in numbers. With her Yuanfu realm cultivation base, as long as she had enough stellar fruits, she would be able to unleash some powerful innate techniques. Qian Mingyu furrowed her brows as she stared into Qin Wentian's eyes. Forget it, since we are acquaintances, let's split the fruits equally. Qian Mingyu didn't want to haggle too much. Not only that, there were 4 of them, while Qin Wentian only had 2. Even if they split the fruits equally, they would still get the most. Maybe, in Qian Mingyu's heart, she also felt that they should be the ones to distribute the fruits. After all, compared to them, Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing were the weaker party. If it was someone else, they wouldn't even think of splitting the fruits, and would directly deal with Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing instead. Qin Wentian was no longer as simple and honest as he was in the past. The moment he heard Qian Mingyu's words, he instantly knew what she was thinking. However, the female cultivator beside Qian Mingyu interjected, "No way, Mississippi. Now that there are external enemies, if we split the fruits equally with him, wouldn't it be the same as gifting the fruits to others? Don't tell me you expect them to resist?" This female cultivator had delicate features and could be considered quite beautiful. However, the expression on her face caused Qin Wentian to feel a sense of loathing. He grabbed a few stellar fruits and passed them to Qian Mingyu. "Don't worry, I won't implicate your green cloud pavilion. Take these fruits as a gift from me." After which, he shifted his gaze onto the other 3 as he coldly stated, "Since you guys like to split the fruits so clearly, why should I give them to you? If you want to snatch them away, I'm more than happy to oblige." Qin Wentian held Mo Qingqing's hand and walked away. Obviously, he was also angered. You ungrateful thing, if it weren't for us, would you still be alive?" The woman's eyes flashed with killing intent as she pointed a finger at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian was too impudent. "Shut up." Qin Wentian scolded and said coldly, "When we were besieged, the 2 of us attracted the pursuit of 5 experts. Didn't we solve the problem ourselves? When did we need your protection?" "Hee, Brother Qin, let's put your business aside for now. I'll introduce you to our alliance. Are you going to hand over the star fruits?" Yi Xiang said coldly. Once they saw a treasure, these people couldn't wait any longer. After all, no one knew what would happen in the celestial pool trial. Qin Wentian glanced at Ouyang Quangxing. No one dared to cause trouble for him, and not only that, Ouyang Quangxing had obtained so many star fruits. These people all treated him like a soft persimmon, easy to bully. "You're thinking too much." Qin Wentian glanced at Yi Xiang, before bringing Mo Qingqing along as they advanced. "Hee, hand over all the star fruits you guys have." Beside Mu Baifei, a swallow swordsman walked out, staring at those from the Green Cloud Pavilion as well as Qin Wentian as he calmly stated. His eyes shone with an innate arrogance, as though he had no one in his eyes. "Let's go." Qin Wentian held onto Mo Qingqing's hand as he sprinted forwards. He didn't want to waste time with these people. "Let's go too." Qian Mingyu also spoke, as they sprinted forwards as well. The swallow swordsman coldly laughed, as the rest of the swallow swordsmen chased after him. Ouyang Quangxing stood there, an expression of interest on his face. He had heard that the appearance of the stellar fruits in the celestial pool trial would always incite conflict. In the eyes of everyone, the stellar fruits were treasures, but wasn't their existence a calamity? Maybe it was a test in itself. Turning his head, Ouyang Quangxing saw several silhouettes sprinting over. He saw those from the Beast King Hall, Sky Demon Sect, and even those from the Wang clan of the War Continent. Ouyang Quangxing. Those from the Wang clan halted their steps, only to see Wang Xiao glancing at Ouyang Quangxing. After which, a sharp glint of light flashed in his eyes as he asked, "You obtained the stellar fruits?" Ouyang Quangxing glanced at Wang Xiao. He knew that when this fellow went crazy, everyone would have to be wary of him. His lips curled into a cold smile as he sprinted forwards as well. Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing were at the very front, but very quickly, their countenances turned unsightly. In front of them, there was a gigantic mountain rampart that pierced through the clouds. It was unknown how tall it was, but there was only a single path in the middle of it. However, at this moment, a terrifying suction force emanated from that path, as a hurricane that could tear space apart howled in rage. Qin Wenin and Mo Qingqing halted their steps, as their countenances turned unsightly as they stared at the rampart in front of them. "Take this, be careful." Qin Wenin retrieved a few stellar fruits and stuffed them into Mo Qingqing's hands. Mo Qingqing lightly nodded her head, and the two of them turned, only to see a cloud of dust in the distance. The first to arrive were those from the clear jade pavilion, and when they saw the silhouettes in the distance, their countenances turned unsightly as well. There was actually a rampart here. If that was the case, it would be unavoidable for the experts who arrived here to clash against each other. And since they possessed the stellar fruits, they would be the first to suffer the impact. Mu Baifei and the rest had arrived. However, they weren't in a hurry to act. They had also discovered that there were people running towards them from behind, and not too long later, many experts had already arrived at the rampart of the towering mountain. Ouyang Quangshen glanced at the crowd before shifting his gaze onto Qin Wenin. This was all Qin Wentian's fault. If he hadn't taken the Yellow Springs monument away, none of these people would have been able to reach this point. "Qian Mingyu from the Green Cloud Pavilion, hand that item over." Mu Baifei took a step forward as he stared at Qian Mingyu. His voice contained a faint hint of arrogance, and the two swallow swordsmen beside him simultaneously stepped out. An intense surge of sword intent gushed forth, gushing towards the four from the Green Cloud Pavilion. "We'll only know after we try." Qian Mingyu's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. Mu Baifei and the other two continued forward, their sword qi growing even stronger. After which, they released their astral souls as a resplendent sword intent permeated the air. The swallow swordsmen all had sword-type astral souls. However, there were differences in their sword-type astral souls, because the astral souls they condensed were all different. The three of them advanced shoulder to shoulder, and with a single point of their fingers, millions upon millions of sharp swords whistled through the air, exterminating everything in their path. A terrifying sword tempest could be felt, slaying anyone who obstructed their path. What a powerful sword qi! The crowd was stunned. A sword also appeared in Qian Mingyu's hands. She was proficient in the 9 swords of life. Her sword danced in the air, growing and multiplying endlessly as it slashed out. At the same time, the female cultivator beside her also launched her own attack, clashing against the terrifying sword tempest. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of intense sword qi whistling through the air was exceptionally ear-piercing, as the entire battlefield was enveloped by a tempest. The 3 swallow swordsmen continued advancing, and with every step they took, boundless sword qi would radiate from their bodies. Their fingers unceasingly stabbed out, and the terrifying sword intent they exuded seemed to be stacking on top of each other, growing stronger and stronger. Qin Wenin silently mused in his heart, as expected of swordsmen from transcendent powers. Any one of these 3 swallow swordsmen would be able to dominate the entire Junlin banquet in Chu. In fact, they were even stronger compared to him when he participated in the Junlin banquet back then. But now, Qin Wentian didn't feel that he was weaker than them. The Qin Wentian now was many times stronger compared to him during the Junlin banquet. "Brother Qin, you've also seen the strength of the swallow swordsman. A wise man submits to circumstances, it's not too late to hand them over now." Yi Xiang walked to the side of Qin Wentian, as he spoke in a low voice, as though he was a vile character. Qin Wentian swept a glance at Yi Xiang, as he spat out a single word, "Scram." Yi Xiang's countenance sank, as his countenance turned sinister. He stared at Qin Wentian, before shifting his gaze onto Mo Qingqing. "Brother Qin, it's fine if you die, but don't implicate Mo Qingqing." Qin Wentian stared at Yi Xiang, and upon seeing his countenance, a sharp glint of coldness flickered in his eyes, causing Yi Xiang to feel a sense of dread. That gentle youth, when frowning in anger, actually gave off a formless pressure. "We'll hand them over." And at this moment, on the other side of the battlefield, Qian Mingyu and her companions were forced into a corner by the 3 swallow swordsmen. They had no way to retreat, as the sword qi grew stronger and stronger. They could only agree to hand over the stellar fruits. Pucci! Fresh blood splattered as one of the swallow swordsmen behind Chen Mingyu was pierced through by the sword light, dying on the spot. This caused Chen Mingyu's countenance to stiffen, as her countenance turned incomparably ugly to behold. At the same time, the sword chi dissipated as Mu Baifei calmly stated, "If you knew this would happen, why did you resist?" His voice was still filled with arrogance as he stretched out his hands towards Chen Mingyu. Chen Mingyu's countenance turned ashen as she retrieved all the stellar fruits in her possession, tossing them over to Mu Baifei. Only then did those who arrived later understood that this was a competition for the stellar fruits. "I don't think there's only this much," Mu Baifei calmly stated. After which, the female swallow swordsman beside Chen Mingyu pointed to Qin Wenyin. "The rest are in his hands, while the rest of the stellar fruits are with Ouyang Guangxing. If you have the ability, go ahead and take them." Qin Wenyin furrowed his brows, only to see Mu Baifei turning his gaze towards him as he calmly stated, "Where are the stellar fruits?" His gaze was still filled with arrogance. He wanted all of the stellar fruits. If not, there wouldn't even be enough for them to split amongst themselves. "Hee, Brother Qin, if you really infuriate Brother Mu, I'm afraid you won't even be able to keep your life." Yi Xiang continued, as though he was a fox borrowing the tiger's might. "Do you believe that I won't take your life first?" Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a demonic light. His calm voice caused Yi Xiang's countenance to stiffen, as his countenance grew increasingly unsightly. "He should have quite a few stellar fruits on him. You guys can split them amongst yourselves." Mu Baifei spoke to his followers, causing their eyes to flicker with a bright light. Evidently, Mu Baifei knew that in this situation, he wasn't the only one who wanted the stellar fruits. There were other transcendent powers as well. If it was just the three of them, it would be impossible for them to monopolize the stellar fruits. Not only that, based on their arrogance, they wouldn't stoop so low as to kill a nameless nobody. Qin Wentian seemed to be a follower of the Green Cloud Pavilion. Chapter 186. The gazes of Yi Xiang and the rest all landed on Qin Wenyan, only to see a few of them walking towards Qin Wenyan. "Brother Qin, don't blame us if you don't know what's good for you." Yi Xiang faintly spoke, as killing intent gushed forth from him. He wanted to see, Qin Wenyan was just an ignorant brat from a small country. What qualifications did he have to be so arrogant? He didn't even know about the Ouyang aristocrat clan and the other transcendent powers of the 9 continents. Busy, Yi Xiang and the rest moved, releasing their astral souls. Qin Wentian's countenance was ice cold. How could he hand over the stellar fruits that were already in his hands? His long hair fluttered in the wind as demonic qi gushed forth. The blood in his body surged as the blood-colored runes in his body pulsated, containing a terrifying power within. The two of them simultaneously rushed over. Mo Qingqing wanted to move, but Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice, "Leave it to me." As the sound of his voice faded, his silhouette transformed into a series of afterimages, instantly colliding with his opponents. Lifting his palms, he blasted out a terrifying palm imprint. The 4th stance of the Thousand Hands imprint, Kuji imprint. In the instant that the palm imprint blasted out, the space became deathly silent, burying everything in its path. Moreover, that terrifying gigantic palm imprint even contained an incomparably sharp sword will. He had blasted out the withered silence imprint with his sword divine origin energy. The countenances of the two attacking Qin Wentian froze. They could feel the pressure of that palm imprint pressing down on them, causing them to feel as though they were suffocating. It was as though the only thing left in this world was that ancient palm imprint, capable of destroying everything. The spectators stared at the palm imprint, feeling their hearts trembling in fear. This ancient palm imprint contained a terrifying amount of energy, and was even glowing with a blood-colored light, exuding the will of a king. Yi Xiang and his opponent had nowhere else to retreat, and could only use their strongest attacks to defend. However, a thunderous rumbling sound rang out as Yi Xiang's arm was instantly destroyed. A look of terror flashed in his eyes as the terrifying Kuji imprint engulfed him. Their bodies were directly crushed into pieces, not even their bones remained. How powerful! Everyone's gazes froze. That Madra just now was probably at the level of a mid-grade Earth-level spell, and it was extremely powerful. Yi Xiang and Yi Futian probably didn't even have time to reveal their trump cards before they were killed. Staring at the young man standing there, his long hair turned black, incomparably demonic. The demonic aura exuding from him was extremely intense, and the blood in his body churned intensely, as though he was a king looking down on the world. It was just that the youth was still young. If he was a bit more mature and stronger, the aura of a king would be even more impactful. The power of his bloodline might be an extremely powerful bloodline. The countenances of Qian Mingyu and the others from the Green Cloud Pavilion were all extremely fascinating. Qian Mingyu silently mused that she had still underestimated Qin Wentian's combat prowess. Qin Wenyan could feel the blood-red runes within his body pulsating, and he felt a surge of power coursing through his body. The blood-red runes contained a bloodline power that could be directly fused into his attacks, releasing a terrifying might. So what if you've obtained the star fruits? Can't you see the current situation clearly? Do you think the Swallow Swordsman will bring you into the Celestial Pond? Take a look at the number of experts behind you. Qin Wenyan swept his gaze across the crowd, causing their countenances to stiffen as they turned their heads to glance at him, their hearts filled with trepidation. Don't be a bridal gown for others. If you insist on being stubborn, I'm afraid all of you will die here. An ancient halberd appeared in Qin Wentian's hands as he stabbed it into the ground beside him. What arrogant words! Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, Mu Baifei indifferently remarked. His white robes fluttered in the wind as sword qi gushed forth from him, as he stared at Qin Wenyan. Capture him! Mu Baifei spat out another command, his voice as calm as ever. The arrogance of a swallow swordsman was just as strong as ever. The two swordsmen beside him walked towards Qin Wenyan, releasing their astral souls. Sword qi gushed forth from their bodies as they pointed towards Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan stared at the two swordsmen. Wielding the ancient halberd in his hands, he similarly stepped forward. With every step he took, the aura he exuded grew stronger and stronger. His eyes seemed to be able to cause people to sink into them. The two white-robed swordsmen stabbed out with their fingers. Sword qi gushed forth, tearing apart the void as tens of thousands of beams of sword light swept forth. Qin Wentian's ancient halberd danced in the air as the Xuanwu shadow flickered, unmoving. The two swallow swordsmen coldly laughed. Pointing their fingers in the air, two resplendent swords slashed downwards, wanting to cleave apart the void. Blood-colored inscriptions danced about, fusing into the innate technique. Qin Wentian's defense grew even stronger as a crimson glow flickered within. He took another step forward, not retreating but advancing instead, suppressing his opponent. The swallow swordsmen coldly snorted as they similarly advanced forward. Both their hands slashed out horizontally as the intertwining beams of sword light grew increasingly stronger. In that instant, Qin Wentian's ancient halberd exploded outwards. The Xuanwu turtle howled in rage as it dashed forwards. A crimson glow engulfed the heavens and earth, blocking all the sword qi. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as his ancient halberd transformed into a resplendent beam of light, breaking apart all obstructions. The two swordsmen placed their palms behind their backs and instantly unsheathed their swords. This was the first time the swords of the swordsmen had been unsheathed. Silvery light flashed, piercing the eyes of the onlookers. The two swords simultaneously pierced out, colliding with the ancient halberd. A terrifying sword qi hurricane howled in the air as the surging energy from the ancient halberd caused the swords to tremble. The swordsmen were forced to retreat, their countenances involuntarily stiffening. The power contained within Qin Wentian's attack was truly terrifying. However, in the blink of an eye, their swords danced about once more as the sword qi they emitted grew increasingly stronger. The two swordsmen were akin to streaks of light as they slashed out. Mu Baifei glanced at the ancient halberd in Qin Wentian's hands. That was obviously a divine weapon, and it could amplify the already powerful attacks of Qin Wenyan even further. Mu Baifei's silhouette was like the wind, the humming of his sword as he unsheathed it. His sword was like a shadow of light, striking out at the same time as the other two swordsmen. From 3 different angles, 3 beams of light shot out, aiming to reap away Qin Wentian's life. What an undeserved reputation! Ouyang Guangxing spat out as a look of disdain appeared on his face. The swallow swordsmen were proficient in their attacks, yet they were still suppressed by Qin Wenin. Now, 3 against 1, even if they won, the one to lose face would be Mu Baifei. Mu Baifei obviously knew that his actions this time around wouldn't be very honorable. Hence, he had to take Qin Wentian's life with this strike. Qin Wenin felt an intense sense of danger. Brandishing the ancient halberd in his hands, he didn't unleash any innate techniques, but rather used it to block the incoming attack. Indeed, although Mu Baifei's sword seemed to be far away, it had already collided with the ancient halberd. If Qin Wenin had been a step slower, the sword would have pierced through his throat. Borrowing the force of the impact, Qin Wenin executed the Garuda movement technique. His footwork was incomparably exquisite, as he retreated like a phantom. The swords of the other 2 swordsmen pierced through Qin Wentian's body. The terrifying whistling sound of their swords scraped against Qin Wentian's face, causing him to feel a little sticky. Qin Wenin, who was retreating, touched his face. There was a drop of blood on it, an injury caused by the sword chi earlier. Swallow swordsman? Qin Wenin inclined his head, staring at the 3 in front of him. An expression of mockery could be seen on his face as he coldly stated, "Merely is it." As he spoke, the expressions on the faces of the spectators turned extremely fascinating. Qin Wentian's strength was indeed very powerful, to be able to block an attack from Mu Baifei and his 2 companions. Mu Baifei raised his sword horizontally as he calmly replied, "Is that so?" As the sound of his voice faded, the sword chi from his body exploded forth, becoming even stronger. Upon witnessing this scene on the other side, several people walked towards Mo Qingqing. Mo Qingqing was the companion of Qin Wenin. She should also have some yuan meteor stones on her. However, a silhouette suddenly appeared in front of Mo Qingqing. This silhouette was clad in black, and her exquisite figure gave off a breathtaking feeling. Qin Wenin wanted to take a look at her face, yet she was wearing a conical bamboo hat and a veil covering her face. There was no way to see her true features, only a pair of bright eyes could be seen. When this silhouette appeared, a group of people dressed in the same attire appeared beside her, standing in front of Mo Qingqing, as though they were intentionally protecting her. However, other than the person in the lead, the others didn't conceal their faces. Those from the Mystic Moon Hall want to join in the fun as well? Mu Baifei's countenance flashed with a strange light as he stared at the situation. Those from the Mystic Moon Hall had always been mysterious, and the innate techniques they cultivated were all extremely unique. Hence, the majority of them were female. The Mystic Moon Hall of the Spirit Continent was one of the transcendent powers of the Grand Xia Empire. Qin Wenin was initially worried about Mo Qingqing, but upon seeing the appearance of those from the Mystic Moon Hall, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, he couldn't help but feel puzzled in his heart. Mo Qingqing was someone from Chu, and it was impossible for her to have any interactions with the Mystic Moon Hall of the 9 continents. A woman from the Mystic Moon Hall? Shiki from the Beast King Hall stared at Mo Qingqing as his eyes brightened. At this moment, although Mo Qingqing was concealing her true appearance, he had seen the beautiful side of Mo Qingqing. Now that he saw the guards from the Mystic Moon Hall standing in front of her, he immediately assumed that Mo Qingqing was an important character from the Mystic Moon Hall. "He go," Shiki coldly stated. Instantly, those from the Beast King Hall lunged forward, as a terrifying demonic chi permeated the air. "A bunch of vile beasts," someone from the Mystic Moon Hall mocked. In the Beast King Hall, there were many who possessed the bloodline of beastmen. This mocking voice caused them to go even more berserk, as both sides instantly clashed against each other. "You are mine." Shiki dashed towards Mo Qingqing, his demonic chi billowing. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a cold light as she released her astral souls. Her beautiful wings shone with the resplendent light. Her cultivation base was at the Yuanfu realm, and although her Yuanfu was sealed, she still had an advantage when compared to cultivators at the arterial circulation realm. Qin Wenin gazed in the direction of Shiki as a terrifying glint of light flickered in his eyes. In his heart, he had already sentenced Shiki to death for betraying him. Shiki opened his mouth and swallowed a stellar fruit. A terrifying sword chi tore through the air as the swallow swordsman walked over. "It's still not too late if you guys stop now," Qin Wenin coldly stated as he stared at the three of them. He was worried that Mo Qingqing would be in trouble. "Today, you will die for sure," Mu Baifei calmly stated, his tone filled with certainty. The three of them acted together to deal with Qin Wenin. If Qin Wenin didn't die, where would his reputation go? In the future, he wouldn't be able to lift his head up high in front of his peers in the 9 continents. Right now, all of them only had one foot in Yuanfu. In just a year or two more, the 9 continents would be the place for people of their generation to shine. "Since you want to die, I shall grant you your wish." Qin Wenin stabbed the ancient halberd in his hands into the ground beside him. Abruptly, a terrifying storm of sword chi gushed forth from his body. To the astonishment of the crowd, Qin Wentian's entire body shimmered with resplendent astral swords. Countless swords enveloped Qin Wentian, emitting a humming sound as a fearsome sharpness permeated the air. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.